Hey guys! If you were born a servant boy in Louis XIV's Versailles, you'd probably enter the world not to a lullaby or a mother's kiss, but to the clanging echo of a dropped bucket and the murmur of slippers hurrying down a corridor. Imagine your first breath, drawn in a linen closet tucked behind a velvet-draped hallway where air smells faintly of starch, damp stone, and chamber pot vinegar. No royal fanfare, no golden cradle, just the scratch of hay in a wicker basket and your mother's trembling hands wiping your newborn cheeks with the edge of her apron because that's the cleanest cloth available. You're tiny, barely the length of a loaf of bread, scrawny from the lack of meat your mother could afford during pregnancy, but you're alive, which already places you a step ahead of many born on that same cold morning. Your mother is a scullery maid, one of the lowliest ranks, and she gave birth during her third shift of the day, between peeling turnips and scrubbing soot from copper pots. There wasn't a midwife, just another maid who happened to have seen it done once before. There's no doctor, not for people like you, and no record of your birth in any book that matters. Just a vague memory in the minds of those who already have too many other things to remember. Your first moments are spent bundled in a thin sheet that once lined a breadbasket. The room is dim, not because anyone's trying to comfort you, but because candles are too expensive to waste on a baby who can't work yet. The light from the high, barred window falls in narrow bands across your face, tracing your tiny cheekbones and the soft beginnings of curly dark hair. Your mother, exhausted and already behind on her tasks, rests only a few minutes before she has to rise and pretend like she hadn't just brought another mouth into this underfed world. Versailles is immense and overwhelming. Hundreds of rooms, thousands of steps, and none of them belong to you. The palace gleams with gold and polished marble, but your life begins in the gaps between those surfaces. Behind every ornate door is another servant ready to press their ear to the keyhole, and behind every wall is a hidden corridor for people like you to pass unseen. And so from the first breath you take, you are part of the machine, silent, invisible, replaceable.
Your mother gives you a name, whispered softly into your ear while she swaddles you with one hand and stirs porridge with the other. She names you Jacques, though she suspects no one will ever ask. Later, when you cry in the night, she hushes you not with a lullaby, but with a desperate quiet please, for fear of waking the steward upstairs. She ties you to her back with a length of spare linen and carries you down the corridor to the kitchen, where the cook clicks her tongue but allows it, just this once. You're already working, in your own way, just by being silent and portable. Even in infancy, you're absorbing sounds and smells you'll never unlearn. The clatter of iron ladles, the reek of vinegar and boiled cabbage, the squeak of rats in the walls. You learn by osmosis that silence keeps you safe, and that your worth depends on your ability not to make trouble. You hear the difference in footsteps. Heavy boots mean nobles, soft heels mean ladies, and bare feet mean other children like you, sneaking through the dark to steal a corner of bread left too close to the edge of a counter. You're breastfed, briefly, but your mother's milk dries too soon, worn thin by exhaustion. You're moved to a goat's milk mixture, warmed on the stove, administered from the corner of a broken spoon. You drink it greedily, not because it's tasty, nothing in your life ever really will be, but because your body already knows that hunger is the one companion that never leaves. And yet, somehow, you survive. While other servant infants die quietly of fevers or colic, your body proves stubborn. You squall often, your cry echoing just enough to be mistaken for a squeaky hinge. No one remarks on you in the grand rooms of Versailles, but in the kitchens and the laundry cellars, they begin to note your sturdiness. That one's a cry, the butcher mumbles, means he'll be strong. You don't understand the words, of course, but you absorb the tone, the way people assess you like they would a runt piglet. Low expectations, but not no expectations. You're barely 1 year old when you crawl across a pile of drying linens and tip over the mop bucket for the first time. It's your first real contribution to chaos, and it earns your first slap on the wrist. Your mother scolds you gently, not out of anger, but out of terror. Any mess caused by a servant's child reflects badly on her, and bad reflections can mean dismissal. And dismissal at Versailles is as good as death. There's no countryside to return to, no relatives with spare room. If you lose your place, you lose everything.
By your second birthday, though no candle is lit, no cake is sliced, you can toddle. You stagger down the servant corridors with your arms out like wings, mimicking the page boys you sometimes glimpse through cracks in the wainscoting. You don't yet know what a king is, but you do know that there are people whose clothes are brighter than yours, whose meals smell better, and who never seem to be scolded for knocking things over. One night, during a thunderstorm, your mother bundles you in a sheet and tucks you beneath the preparation table while she works. Rain lashes against the windows, thunder booms, and from your hiding place, you see lightning illuminate the kitchen walls. You don't cry, you just watch, wide-eyed, the flicker of shadows on the ceiling, shadows of ladles and hooks and cleavers, and already your young brain connects darkness with mystery, with danger, but also with wonder. In time, you're passed from arm to arm. Your mother's duties increase, and she can't carry you always. Other maids take turns, some gently, some not. You learn to recognize their moods by the way they tie your swaddling cloth. If they knot it tight, it'll be a rough day. If they hum while holding you, you might get an extra crust of bread. Once, you're forgotten entirely and left to sleep in a laundry cart. You wake to find yourself surrounded by damp linens and the sharp stink of lye. You don't cry. Crying is dangerous. Already, at 2.5, you've internalized your position in the world. Not quite human in the eyes of those who live upstairs, not yet useful to those who toil beside you. Somewhere in between, an object in training, a broom with legs. At 3, you speak your first full sentence. "More bread, please." The cook laughs, startled, not unkind, and tosses you a chunk the size of your fist. You gnaw on it like a fox kit, crouched in a corner near the hearth. Your fingers are calloused already, and you have more bruises than memories. There are no toys, no bedtime stories, but there are spoons to clang, pots to hide in, and mice to watch skitter by. And from these, you build your own little kingdom of noise and hiding spots. It's a kingdom you'll lose soon enough, but for now, it is yours. A scrap of cloth becomes a cape, a ladle becomes a trumpet, and Versailles, for one breathless moment in your young life, becomes a palace not of kings, but of secret tunnels and warm firelight. And though no one sees it, not really, something in you begins to root itself, deep, silent, unshakable. You may be born beneath the gilded ceilings, but your eyes are already adjusting to the dark.
You don't remember your first steps, but others do. They talk about how you waddled around with your belly sticking out, your feet slapping softly against the worn stone floors of the servants' wing. By the time you're 4, you no longer need anyone to carry you. You've become self-propelled, which is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because now you can be sent on errands, and a curse because, well, now you can be sent on errands. And there are always errands in Versailles. You're officially considered a petit domestique, a little domestic. It's not a job, per se. You're too small for anything that requires real labor, too weak to carry firewood, too short to polish mirrors without dragging a stool. But you're not too small to be noticed, and not too young to be useful in the way only very small people can be. You can crawl under furniture, fetch things that fall behind heavy wardrobes, and be slipped into places where larger servants can't go. You become a sort of living tool, a movable fixture. You're assigned tasks that require agility, silence, and the kind of invisibility that comes naturally to children no one makes eye contact with. Your first real memory, vivid, clear, and unshakable, is of your mother balancing a tray with one hand and adjusting your cap with the other, muttering to herself about how you've grown too fast. "They'll put you in the laundry next if you're not careful," she whispers. You don't know what the laundry means yet, but her tone makes it sound like exile, a punishment. And so, like all wise children who grow up in palaces that aren't theirs, you learn to stay close, stay quiet, and stay small for just a little longer. The kitchens are your second home, and not just because that's where the warmth lives. It's where the smells change every hour, where steam fills the rafters and fogs the glass, and where the bustle never stops. You learn to duck when the cook bellows, to flinch when pans crash, and to stay absolutely still when a nobleman enters the room. Nobles don't come often, but when they do, even the cockroaches know to freeze. You eat when others aren't looking. A scrap here, a crust there. Sometimes an older boy smuggles you a boiled carrot, already bitten. Other times you get lucky. Leftovers from a broken tart, or the end of a sausage someone dropped behind a barrel. You're not picky. Your stomach never learned the luxury of preference. Once you find a grate that's rolled under the hutch. You stare at it for a full minute before daring to eat it, as if it might vanish in front of you. It doesn't. It's delicious. You remember that grate for months.
The other servant children are your world now. There are 6 or 7 regulars who roam the halls when they're not hiding. You don't know all their names, and it doesn't matter. You communicate through glances, gestures, the universal language of small bodies moving in cramped spaces. You form a silent kind of camaraderie. One boy, a freckled child named Luke, shows you how to steal the end bits of buttered bread from the scullery when the maid turns her back. Another, Elise, teaches you to recognize which nobles will yell and which will simply pretend you're not there. You start to understand hierarchy not by reading it in books, but by watching who bows to whom and who never bows at all. One day you're told to carry a bundle of firewood from the courtyard to the steward's room. The bundle is bigger than your chest. The wood scrapes your arms and the splinters leave little stinging trails. But you make it. You're panting and flushed but upright. The steward doesn't thank you. He doesn't even look up. But someone does. A footman near the door gives you a slight nod. It's barely more than a blink, but it feels like a trophy. It feels like being seen, even just a little. At night, you sleep in a room that isn't really a room. It's more of a space, an alcove behind the broom cupboard, curtained off with a sackcloth sheet. There's a straw mattress on the floor, musty and lumpy, but it's yours. You share it with 2 other boys, both older, both snorers. The smell of feet is strong, but you've long since stopped noticing. It's warm, that's what matters. You curl up, your legs tucked against your chest, and listen to the night sounds of the palace. The distant creak of floorboards, the clatter of a late-night chamber pot being emptied, the muffled coughs of tired servants in rooms like yours. Your dreams are rarely vivid. Mostly they're of food or falling or hiding in cupboards. Once, you dream of riding a horse down the hall of mirrors, laughing while everyone applauds. You wake up laughing too, until you realize where you are, and you press your hand to your mouth to stop the sound. No one applauds in the servants' alcoves. By the time you're 5, you're assigned a mop, a real one. It's too tall for you, so the kitchen boy saws it down to your size with a knife meant for boning fish. You feel proud. It's your tool. It means someone thinks you can do something. You take to it with clumsy enthusiasm, dragging it across the black and white tiles, slopping water as you go. Your back hurts quickly, but you don't complain. Complaining is a luxury for people whose mothers don't work 3 jobs. You mop until your hands blister. When your fingers crack, you tie them with strips of linen soaked in wine vinegar. It stings, but you've already learned that pain is part of the bargain. Everyone hurts. Everyone hides it.
You begin to recognize the rhythms of Versailles. The thunderous bustle of morning, when everyone scrambles to prepare for the king's rising. The brief lull after he dresses, when the nobles attend his levee and the halls grow quiet, save for the occasional echoing footstep. The chaos of midday meals, the frantic reset for afternoon strolls in the garden, the hushed anticipation of evening gatherings. Life is not measured by the sun here. It's measured by Louis XIV, the Sun King. You hear his name more often than you hear your own. He's the reason for the floors you mop, the food you stir, the hallways you crawl through. He exists above you, far, far above, but every decision he makes trickles downward into your hands. When he wants more fountains in the garden, someone like your mother must carry more buckets. When he prefers a new dish, someone like you must clean the pots it was cooked in. You begin to understand that being small doesn't mean being uninvolved. It just means being ignored while you're crushed under the gears. Once you glimpse him, not clearly, not fully, just a sweep of gold-trimmed robes, a gleam of curly wig, a burst of perfume that makes your eyes water. He passes down a hallway while you're pressed into the shadows, holding a brush and a pail. You hold your breath as he moves by. You don't even blink. Later, you'll swear his shoes didn't touch the floor. Your mother starts looking older. Not just tired, everyone is tired, but worn. Her back curves more, her hands tremble when she peels vegetables, and her voice has taken on a husky rasp. You try to help more, but your help is still clumsy. She thanks you anyway. Once, she strokes your hair and murmurs, "You'll outlast me, I think." You don't understand what she means. Not fully, but her eyes looked far away when she says it. The older servants talk in low voices about accidents, about a boy who fell from the rafters, about a girl scalded by soup. You're not sure if the stories are true. No one ever confirms them, but no one denies them either. They're passed around like bedtime tales designed to remind you that no one is irreplaceable. Still, you wake each morning. You scrub your face in cold water. You tie your own shoes, frayed, mismatched, but functional. You learn to tie knots, to balance a tray, to move without sound. You're becoming useful. And in Versailles, that's the closest thing to safety you'll ever know.
By the time you're 6, you've learned the palace's geography not from maps, but from your knees and palms. You've crawled through the smallest spaces, scuttled beneath benches and tables, wedged yourself behind cabinets to chase fallen objects or hide from a steward in a foul mood. But there is one realm in Versailles that you begin to know better than most: the nursery wing. You are not there because you belong. You are there because you were permitted, barely. Servant children are not meant to mingle with the children of nobles, but someone has to clean the nursery. Someone has to crawl on hands and knees to retrieve the grapes, cherries, and candied nuts that roll off golden plates. Someone has to sop up the milk spilled by careless little princes and duchesses. Someone has to wipe jam off the polished floor before it stains. And so, you're often summoned to the edge of that world, mop in hand, barefoot, careful to look down. Never up. Never directly into a young marquis's eyes, even when he's no older than you. You pretend not to hear when they call you rat boy or filth mouse. You don't respond when they throw things. It's a game to them. For you, it's the shape of your daily bread. Still, there are moments, small, strange ones. Once, a noble girl with a pink satin dress and curls tied in ribbons drops her biscuit. You're already wiping up a stain nearby. She watches you for a moment. Then she bends, picks up the biscuit, and hands it to you. "You can have it," she says, as if giving away an old toy. You take it without a word. It's stale, but sweet. You eat it in a quiet corner near the laundry, and you think of her face. Not cruel, not kind, just curious. The way someone might look at a sparrow hopping across the windowsill. The nursery wing smells different from the rest of the palace. Not just the powder and sugar, but of linen washed too often, of milk gone slightly sour, of lavender sachets crammed in drawers to ward off fleas. You begin to recognize each noble child by scent alone. One reeks of honey and stale urine. Another leaves a trail of orange blossom and chalk dust. You become something like a ghost to them, always nearby, never spoken to, always cleaning up what they leave behind. You're not allowed to speak unless spoken to. But that rule, like many in Versailles, is both rigid and frequently ignored. Sometimes a child will test you. They'll ask a question they already know the answer to just to see if you know it. Do you know what this is? A boy once said, waving a silver fork with 2 prongs instead of 3. You said, fish fork. He looked disappointed. Even the rats know that now, he muttered. Then he threw it at your feet and laughed. The furniture in the nursery is scaled for the noble children, but still too large for you. Everything is plush, pale, and precariously clean, until, of course, they touch it. You scrub jam from chair legs, scrape melted wax off small writing desks, polish doll-sized harpsichords used only once during music lessons. Your mop becomes an extension of your body, and you begin to move with it like it's a limb. Twist, dip, flick, dab. You begin to dance a strange, slow waltz through the sticky corners of aristocratic childhood. Once a week, a troupe of entertainers comes to amuse the children. You're told to vanish before they arrive, but one time you don't. You hide behind a brocade curtain, heart pounding, breath shallow, and you peek. You watch a harlequin juggle apples. You see a woman in blue robes do sleight of hand tricks, making gold coins disappear beneath cups. The children squeal and laugh, and you feel an odd ache in your chest. Not jealousy exactly, something quieter, like you're watching a different species in their natural habitat. That night, in your shared alcove, you try to juggle 3 potatoes. You fail. One rolls into a slop bucket. One hits you in the face. The third is stolen by a boy with quicker hands. You laugh anyway, quietly, because someone's already asleep. Food is never plentiful for you, but the nursery wing does have its occasional windfalls. You find a peach once, dropped behind a cabinet and forgotten. It's bruised on one side and slightly fermented, but it's yours. You eat it in 5 bites, juice running down your chin. You chew the pit, not because you think it's food, but because it prolongs the illusion of abundance. Your chores extend beyond cleaning. You become a runner of errands, carrying messages between wet nurses, fetching chalk for the tutors, delivering trimmed quills from the scribe's room. You carry a slate once, inscribed with arithmetic problems. You don't understand the symbols, but you trace them with your finger and feel a strange thrill, like maybe one day you could understand them if someone just showed you how. You begin to notice the power of silence, how the loudest children are not the most powerful, but the ones whose names are whispered. You hear a name, Philippe, spoken with fear, though the boy himself is no older than you. You see how tutors flinch when he sneezes. You notice how other children freeze when he glares, and you realize some power is inherited and some is merely learned. But either way, it trickles down and lands in your mop water.
You start helping in the adjoining laundry room. The sheets from the nursery are sent there each day, many of them soiled, some simply wrinkled beyond a governess's tolerance. You lug them in baskets larger than yourself. The washerwomen grunt when they see you and rarely speak, but they hand you soap scraps and teach you how to scrub cloth against stone. You get wet often. Your fingers prune. Your wrists ache, but at least it's warm in there, with the steam rising and the fire constantly stoked. One day, while dragging a basket back to the nursery, you spot your reflection in a burnished kettle. You pause. You barely recognize yourself. Your face is thinner. Your eyes seem larger, not with wonder, but with watchfulness. Your hair has grown into tangled wisps around your ears. You look like a boy who's learning to vanish while standing still. Sometimes, when no one is looking, you sit near the nursery window. Not at it, just near it. You don't dare touch the panes, but you let the light hit your face. You close your eyes and imagine you're out there, beyond the gardens, beyond the gates, where grass grows wild and no one calls you boy, like it's a stain. You imagine a life where jam on your fingers isn't followed by punishment, where toys don't belong to someone else, where your name is spoken with softness instead of urgency. But the moment never lasts. Someone always calls you. There's always something to clean, something to fetch, something to carry. The nursery is full of joy, but none of it spills onto you. You exist on the periphery of someone else's childhood, a background detail in a portrait you'll never be part of. And yet, even here, you find rhythm. You find the music in your footsteps, the pattern in the scrubbing, the game in guessing which toy will break next. You begin to understand that the key to survival isn't just obedience, it's anticipation. You learn to sense moods before they shift, to disappear before tempers rise, to offer help just before it's demanded. In this way, you become indispensable without being memorable. And for a servant child in Versailles, that's the highest form of protection. You don't ask questions, you don't seek praise. You do what's expected, and a little more. And when the day ends, you return to your alcove, curl up against the stone wall, and dream not of palaces or banquets, but of a single moment, just one, where someone hands you a biscuit and says, "You can have it, like you matter."
You're 7 now, and silence has settled into your bones like cold into stone. It's not that you never speak, it's just that you've learned the hierarchy of voices. The louder a voice is allowed to be, the higher its owner sits in the palace's invisible pyramid. And so your voice lives mostly in your chest, emerging only in yeses and sorries, in mumbled acknowledgments and the occasional whispered joke between shores. You're not mute, just carefully, meticulously quiet. Your days are marked by patterns. You rise before the sun, always. Sometimes it's your own body that wakes you, the ache in your lower back from yesterday's lifting, or the chill that creeps in when another boy rolls away and takes the shared blanket with him. Sometimes it's the footsteps of older servants padding past your sleeping spot, or the metallic screech of the cook's bells summoning the first kitchen hands. Either way, you're upright before the first rooster crow echoes across the palace grounds. There's no time to stretch, no gentle wake-up ritual. You pull on your coarse shirt and breeches, tie the fraying laces of your shoes, each of them slightly different sizes, both patched, and splash water from the basin onto your face. It's always cold. No matter the season, the water feels like glass against your skin. You don't flinch anymore. That luxury passed with your 5th birthday. Breakfast, if it can be called that, comes in the form of a crust of bread, hardened at the edges, often shared between 2 hands or 3. If you're lucky, someone left a scrap of cheese from the evening's preparation table. If not, you nibble the crust slowly, like it's a ceremony, making it last through the first hour of chores. The first order of business is silence. The nobles, even those not yet stirring, hate noise from below. They like to believe that the palace is a place of serenity, that the gleam of their halls is maintained by magic or divine will rather than sweaty, barefooted children with mops and cloths. So you learn to scrub without squeaking, to sweep without thudding, to polish without breathing too heavily. It becomes a kind of art, the quiet ballet of invisible labor. You clean floors that will be walked across by embroidered slippers and gilded heels. You dust banisters that will be touched by gloved hands. You sweep ashes from fireplaces that haven't been lit in days because someone might want to use the room later. And ash, as everyone knows, is offensive to the aesthetic. The irony isn't lost on you, that so much of your work involves removing dirt that never had time to settle, that entire hours of your life are spent dusting objects that haven't been touched, or arranging flowers that will wilt by sunset. But you don't question it, not aloud. You just do the thing in front of you, and then the next thing, and then the next. The other servant children are growing too. You see it in their longer limbs, and the way their voices begin to crack. You notice it most in the way they move, less like skittering mice, more like cautious cats. You're becoming a cohort of sorts, bonded by proximity and mutual survival. No one says it out loud, but there's a pact among you. Don't get each other caught, and don't let anyone go hungry alone. It's not friendship exactly. It's something grittier, closer to kinship forged in shared punishment. One morning, while dusting the wainscoting along a rarely used hall near the music rooms, you hear the soft notes of a harpsichord. You pause, not from laziness, but from something else. The sound is exquisite, like dewdrops falling in a silver basin. You close your eyes for just a moment, letting the notes press against your chest, and then a sharp voice barks from the other end of the hall, "Move along," and the moment cracks like thin ice under a careless foot. You don't tell anyone about the music. You keep it to yourself like a secret pastry. It becomes your quiet place, even when the notes aren't playing. That hallway, the one with the slightly uneven third floorboard and the faint echo of invisible beauty, becomes your favorite route between duties. You've begun to understand the importance of posture. Not in the noble sense, not the art of holding one's head high at a banquet, but in the servant's version. How to appear occupied when you're resting. How to stoop just enough to seem humble. How to disappear into a corner while still hearing everything. These are skills you don't even realize you're mastering until one day an older valet pats your shoulder and mutters, "You're learning." It's one of the few compliments you've ever received. Still, mistakes happen. One day, while hurrying to deliver a set of gloves to a lady in waiting, you trip on a loose tile and fall. The gloves, white, embroidered, perfumed, land in a puddle from a leaky pipe. Your heart pounds so hard it shakes your ribs. You scoop them up, blot them frantically with your sleeve, try to press them flat, but it's too late. You present them anyway. The lady does not strike you, but she sighs in a way that feels worse. "These people," she says to no one in particular, before letting the gloves drop to the floor like something dead.
Later that night, the steward gives you no supper, no explanation, just a pointed glance. You go to sleep hungry, your stomach curled into itself like a punished child. Sometimes you wonder if the nobles notice your presence at all. Not you specifically, just the category of you. The endless wave of mop-bearing, tray-carrying, bucket-hauling boys who flit from one corridor to the next like ants in a sugar bowl. You hope they don't notice, actually. Attention from above is rarely good. But one day, a courtier does see you, really sees you. He crouches slightly to your level as you're picking up pins from under a dressing table. "How old are you?" he asks. You freeze, unsure if it's a trick. "7, you say. He nods. "Old enough to lie, then." And he stands, adjusting his sleeve, and walks away laughing. You never do find out what he meant. There are hazards to the job. Not just the beatings or the punishments. There are spills of hot wax, of soapy water on slick tiles. There are heavy objects dropped from clumsy hands. There are scalding pans and open flames and loose stones on stairwells. And of course, there's illness. It creeps through the servant quarters like fog. A cough here, a fever there. No one talks about it. But when someone disappears, you all notice, and you learn not to ask. One of your companions, a quiet boy named Henri who always shared his bread crusts, vanishes one morning. You see his blanket neatly folded where he used to sleep. Nothing is said. By evening, someone else is already in that spot. You don't speak his name, but you look for him for days in corners, in kitchens, in courtyards, just in case. You begin to sense the machinery of the palace, the invisible gears behind the golden facade. For every candlelit banquet, there are 24 servants sweating in the kitchens. For every silk garment worn once, there are hands calloused from ironing. You're one cog among thousands, spinning ceaselessly, friction smoothed and easily replaced, but still spinning. You hear things, always. You overhear bits of conversations between footmen and valets, snippets of gossip from maids and cooks. You piece together the world above from the fragments left behind in the corridors. You know which duchess is disliked, which courtier gambles too much, which lady weeps at night. You know the truth of the palace, that all its beauty sits atop a mountain of sweat and silence. And yet, despite it all, there are moments of wonder. The gleam of morning sunlight on the polished floors, the smell of warm bread wafting from the kitchen, the unexpected kindness of a stable boy who lets you pet a horse's nose for half a second before shooing you away. Little things. Brief, quiet joys. You collect them like fallen buttons, useless, but oddly comforting. Because in a life where every day is an echo of the one before, those small things are what make you feel like you're still human.
By the time you're 8, you've begun to trade games for gestures. You no longer crawl beneath furniture unless it's required, no longer chase stray buttons or pretend your broom is a sword. Play has been polished out of you, just like the floors beneath your feet. In its place, you've inherited posture, precision, and that careful half-smile you wear when someone of importance enters the room. Your mornings now begin not with sleep-blurred confusion, but with a list. Not written down, of course, there's no paper for you, but stored carefully in your mind, shaped by routine and repetition. First, you dust the stairwells on the east wing, where noblemen often trample without looking. Then you help straighten chairs in the long gallery, the one with paintings so tall they make your neck ache to look up. After that, if you're lucky, a moment to eat something warm in the scullery before the midday bustle begins. But something has changed recently. A subtle shift, not in your body, but in the way others look at it. You're taller now, your arms less like twigs and more like tools. Your fingers stretch farther, your legs carry buckets more steadily. You're still a child, your voice still high, your teeth still small, but the transition has begun. And with it come lessons. Not lessons like the nobles receive, with quills and tutors and violins. Your lessons come from the mouths of overworked maids and sharp-eyed valets, passed down like recipes in hushed tones between chores. Don't speak before spoken to, one says, adjusting your collar. Wipe counterclockwise when cleaning glass, says another without looking up. If a lady offers you something, don't take it unless she insists twice. First offers are for show. You absorb these rules like bread soaks broth. You memorize the proper way to bow, the exact depth appropriate for someone in your position. Not too low, lest it seem mocking, not too shallow, lest it seem disrespectful. You learn how to carry a silver tray without spilling a drop, how to fold napkins in 5 accepted styles, how to scrub candle wax from velvet without leaving a mark. Folding napkins becomes your specialty. You practice at night using scraps of old linen, the bishop's mitre, the fan, the water lily. You like the water lily best. It feels quiet, symmetrical. It makes you feel, just for a moment, like you have control over something. And then there's the art of saying yes. Yes, madame. Yes, monsieur. Yes, right away. Yes, I understand. Yes, I apologize.
Yes becomes your default shape, molded to fit every tone, every context. You can say it politely, nervously, with urgency, or in a way that sounds almost invisible. You learn when to nod as you say it, when to keep your hands folded, when to avoid all eye contact entirely. Saying yes well, it turns out, is an entire skill set of its own. One day, you're summoned to help during a dinner preparation. Not to serve, no, that's still for older boys, but to polish the cutlery. A whole chest of silver forks, knives, and spoons, each bearing the crest of a family you'll never belong to. You polish until your wrists ache. You learn the rhythm. Cloth in one hand, a bit of ash in the other. Rub, turn, buff, place. It's meditative in a strange way, a dance of surfaces and silence. Another boy, Charles, sits across from you. He's 2 years older, with a clever tongue and eyes that always look like he's about to steal something. Bet you haven't seen the king's fork, he says. You look up.
There's a special one? He nods. It's got a gold sun on the end, real gold. They say if you drop it, they cut off your fingers. You're not sure if he's joking. You don't laugh, just go back to polishing. There's pride, too, buried somewhere in all this quiet drudgery. A strange, stubborn pride. You begin to feel it when someone trusts you with a more delicate task, like laying out the hand mirrors in the ladies' salon, or dusting the ivory chess pieces in the marquise's library. You don't smile when given the job. Smiles are for people with time. But your hands move a little steadier. Your posture straightens just a bit. Pride here wears the clothes of obedience. The worst part, sometimes, is the standing. Not the scrubbing or the lifting, but the stillness. Hours where you must simply wait, holding a tray, holding a curtain, holding your breath while nobles drift past you like fog, discussing matters you'll never be a part of. You grow intimate with your own shadow, counting cracks in the plaster behind you, whispering made-up songs in your head just to stay awake. Occasionally, your stillness pays off. Once, a lady drops her fan, an ivory thing with painted feathers and gold leaf. It flutters to the ground beside you, and you pick it up in one smooth motion, presenting it to her on your open palms. She barely glances at you, but she says, "Thank you, boy." Just those 3 words. But for days, they hum in your chest like a song you don't quite know the words to. Your mother still works in the lower kitchens. You see her less now, your duties lie elsewhere. But when you pass her, you exchange the briefest nods. She's thinner. Her hands look like rope. But her eyes still hold that familiar flicker of steel, and she gives you the occasional crust, wrapped in cloth, slipped into your pocket when no one's looking.
She tells you, quietly, one night, they've started asking about your name in the steward's office. You blink. Why? You whisper. They're watching, she says. You're learning fast. That can be good or bad. You don't ask which one she means. In Versailles, being noticed is a double-edged sword, sharp, gilded, and rarely in your favor. One evening, a valet catches you mimicking a bow in a dusty hallway, practicing your posture in the reflection of a gilt-framed painting. You freeze, horrified. But he doesn't mock you. He just says, "Too stiff. Relax your shoulders. You're not begging for mercy." And then he walks off. You remember it for days, not because he helped, but because he bothered to. Your shoes are starting to fall apart. You patch them with twine and wax, wrapping the soles in scraps of fabric cut from an old curtain. It's not pretty, but it keeps the stones out. One foot is still colder than the other, and your heel bleeds occasionally, but you've long stopped noticing. Pain, after all, is background music here. You've learned how to walk silently. It's not just about soft steps, it's about rhythm, awareness, timing. You know which floorboards groan, which door hinges squeak, which stair creaks if you step near the wall instead of the center. You move like vapor, like shadow, like memory. The older servants begin to nod at you. Not greetings, just small acknowledgments that you're becoming one of them, a part of the machinery. You're no longer a child to be pitied or scolded. You're a servant now, in form and function. You think sometimes about the nobles, their laughter, their jewels, their perfume. You wonder if they ever consider the hands that lay out their gloves, the feet that carry away their waist. You wonder if they remember your face even for a second after passing it. Probably not. But then again, that's part of the magic. To them, the palace runs on elegance and order. To you, it runs on bruised hands and silent mouths. And so, you practice folding napkins in the shape of lilies. You scrub wax from velvet.
You hold trays with the grace of a statue. You say yes in 17 different tones. You walk without sound, bend without breaking, speak only when spoken to, and never when angry. You are a servant boy in Versailles, and you are learning your place, one polished fork at a time.
At 9 years old, your body no longer floats through the palace with the weightless clumsiness of a child. Now your bones begin to carry you like tools. Your arms have grown long enough to carry buckets without spilling. Your legs no longer wobble on the marble stairs. Your voice has settled into a soft, reliable whisper, and your hands, once sticky with jam and curiosity, are now rough with calluses and cracked in the cold. You are, in all but name, a worker. And each day begins the same way, in darkness. Before even the faintest light touches the gardens of Versailles, you're awake. The scullery maids, the laundresses, the fire starters, all of them rise in this darkness. And now, so do you. There are no cocks crowing in this part of the palace, only the wet slap of mop water in distant corridors, the creak of dry kindling shoved into ancient grates, and the dry coughs of those too poor for medicine. You are assigned to the cleaning detail for the East Hall this season, which means waking before the roosters even dream of crowing, slipping past half-asleep guards, and dragging your pail through the vast, silent cold of the hallway. The marble floor always bites your feet, even through your threadbare shoes. The windows are too high for you to see out of, but the darkness that presses against them seems thicker than usual. You shiver and grip the wooden handle of your mop like it might warm you. Your first duty is always the same: clean the baseboards and balustrades before anyone sees them. Not because they're dirty, rarely do they have a speck of dust, but because not cleaning them suggests neglect. Versailles must appear effortless. The scent of polish must float invisibly under the golden light, and the surfaces must gleam as if by divine will. That illusion begins with you, crouched low to the ground, breath fogging the stone, wiping again and again a spot that's already spotless. Sometimes you imagine what the nobles would say if they saw you there, rag in hand, nose nearly pressed to the floor. Probably nothing. At best, a sniff. At worst, a complaint that you're visible. You are not supposed to be visible. Still, there are moments in the dark you enjoy. The palace before it wakes is something altogether different, quieter, colder, stranger. In these early hours, the statues that line the halls seem to breathe. The paintings watch without judgment. The corridors stretch on endlessly, like dreams that forget their ending. You feel, oddly, like the only real person alive. You mop the floor as the silence echoes off the gilded ceiling. You can almost pretend you own the place.
Then the bells ring, and it all ends. The king's rising sets the day in motion. Le lever du roi, they call it. The royal awakening. You're not allowed in the king's chambers, of course, but you feel the ripple. You hear the commotion in the distance, the rustling of silk robes, the barked orders of valets, the shifting feet of guards. Every door opens a little wider. Every servant's spine straightens. You, still scrubbing at a doorframe in the corridor, feel the weight of a crown you'll never see settle over your world like the sun rising too close to the earth. A servant boy like you is allowed, on rare occasion, to assist on the periphery. That's how you find yourself assigned to help polish the king's path. Not literally, of course. Not the actual floor the monarch walks, but all the objects around it. The sconces, the tables, the panels, even the bowls of fruit set in preparation for his passing gaze. It's not the king who inspects your work. It's the chief steward. He walks with gloved hands and a frown so permanent it might be sewn into his face.
He doesn't speak to you, just gestures. You follow his signals like they're divine law. When he points, you scrub. When he lifts a brow, you buff. And when he sighs, you know you've missed something. You polish for 2 hours straight before you're allowed to disappear. But disappearing doesn't mean rest. It means fetching water. The water runs in troughs behind the kitchens, fed from pipes that are temperamental in the cold. The pump creaks with every draw, and the bucket's rope has frayed so many times it now has 3 knots in it. You pump and haul until your arms tingle with fatigue. The bucket splashes against your shins. You don't flinch. You've learned not to. You pass other boys on your way back to the halls. Some you know, some you don't. You nod, barely. There's no time to talk and little reason. Talking costs energy. Energy means mistakes. Still, when the steward isn't watching, you share a smirk with Henry, a boy 2 years your senior, who once saved you from being whipped by claiming responsibility for a cracked bowl. You never forgot it, and he's never asked for repayment. These are the kinds of friendships you learn in Versailles. Silent, wordless, paid for in risk and loyalty. Never acknowledged aloud. Your clothes are damp again by midday. Your hands are raw. But you're given a new task. Help sweep the antechambers before lunch. The antechambers are close to the nobility, which means closer to danger. Every motion must be flawless, every bow precise. You sweep as if being judged by angels. A noblewoman enters the room as you kneel beside the base of a chair. She sweeps past you in a rustle of lavender perfume and irritation. You don't look up, but you do notice her drop something, a handkerchief, delicate and embroidered. You wait. Sometimes picking up a noble's lost item is seen as theft, but this time she pauses. She looks over her shoulder. "Boy," she says, her voice cool as milk, "you may return that." You rise, holding the handkerchief like it's a holy relic. She takes it without touching your skin. "Good," she murmurs, more to herself than to you. "At least someone still notices." You're not sure what she means, but she leaves without another word, and you return to your sweeping. In the servants' wing, word gets around fast. Someone tells you you've been noticed, again, that perhaps the lady you assisted has said something, or perhaps not. Perhaps it was nothing. Hopes rise and fall like dust in the candlelight, but you've learned not to let them settle too long. Later that night, after scrubbing your mop clean and hanging it to dry on a rusty hook, you sneak out into the hallway by the grand staircase. You stand there a moment, just to look. The chandelier above gleams with 200 candles. The marble floor reflects every point of light like a pool of gold. No one is there, just you, and the emptiness, and the sound of distant clinking plates from supper. You imagine walking down the steps like a nobleman. You imagine people parting for you, bowing, whispering your name. But of course, no one does. Your bed that night feels harder than usual. Your knees ache. Your toes are swollen from the weight of water buckets. But your mind is full of the image of the chandelier, of the glimmer it cast on the floor, of the lady's murmured, "Good." You turn it over like a coin beneath your pillow. It's not real currency, not something you can spend, but still, it's something. And as sleep drags you under, you dream not of banquets or ballrooms, but of silence, of empty hallways, polished to perfection, of golden rooms just for you, where no one barks orders, and no one forgets your name. You wake before the sun, as always, but something in you feels taller.
You are 10 now, though no one has marked the day. There is no celebration, no cake, no song, not even a muttered happy birthday from your mother, who likely doesn't remember the exact date herself. In Versailles, time is measured by the king's moods, the turning of seasons through fashion changes and the rise and fall of court favorites. Your age is just another invisible number in a life lived among thresholds. Today, you're told to help with the preparations for Le Petit Lever, the king's public waking ceremony. You won't be in the room, of course. You're not nearly important enough for that. But you are part of the peripheral ballet, the unseen choreography that makes the performance possible. Your job is to ensure that everything outside the king's chambers gleams like myth. The hall leading to the Chambre de Roi is already bustling when you arrive. Footmen polish the brass door handles with frantic little circles. Maids flutter about with lavender water and rose oil to dab on cushions and curtains. A steward checks his pocket watch every 2 minutes, his mustache twitching with each passing second. You stand in your assigned spot, holding a folded cloth, ready to clean any last-minute smudge someone may discover on the wainscoting. You're not meant to move unless told, not even to blink too much. The tension is so thick you could ladle it into a bowl. Then the doors open. There's a hush. Everyone freezes. Through the gap, you see only a sliver of what the king's waking world looks like. Gold-threaded bed curtains, the edge of an embroidered robe, the white wig of a bishop. Then, the doors close again, and the ceremony begins. You won't witness it, but you will hear about it, in fragments. You'll hear how the king greeted the day with a single yawn, how the Duke of Orleans was allowed to adjust the pillow behind his head, how the royal surgeon offered the morning's update on the king's digestion. Yes, that is part of the ceremony. You've learned by now that royalty has no secrets from its audience, not even intestinal ones. You stand there for the next hour, utterly still, as titled men and powdered women pass by, barely noticing your presence. You are part of the frame, not the painting. The marble at your feet is warmer than usual from so many slippers, but your fingers are cold. The cloth in your hand becomes damp from your own sweat, though you barely move.
Then the king leaves the chamber, followed by a wave of sycophants and officials. A breeze of perfume, starch, and expensive boredom washes over you. The king walks tall, though not quickly. You glimpse him, Louis himself. He is smaller than you imagined, yet more radiant. His skin is pale, powdered, soft. His shoes glitter at the heel. He does not look left or right. You might as well be a vase. Less, even. Vases don't sweat. Once he has passed, the spell breaks. The steward turns to you and nods once, sharply. You're dismissed. No words are spoken, but your legs know what to do. You bow, low and fast, and retreat from the corridor. Your heart is pounding. You just stood 5 feet from the Sun King and lived to tell no one about it. You find your way back to the scullery through side corridors. These are the arteries of Versailles, the narrow, grimy passages that thread behind the walls, invisible to the nobles. Here, life resumes at a different pace. Boots squeak, buckets slosh, jokes are told in low voices. You let out a breath and wipe your forehead with your sleeve. Your next task arrives quickly. Assist with the king's breakfast parade. Yes, parade. You've only heard about it until now, whispered by older boys with awe and annoyance. The king does not simply eat, he is served in ceremony. Breakfast is prepared in full view of spectators, a theater of eggs and bread and chocolate, with every gesture choreographed for effect. You are not part of the kitchen team preparing the food, thankfully, but you are summoned to assist with transporting the utensils and cloths that accompany the meal. You're given a tray. On it, a single napkin, freshly pressed, and a small silver pot of chocolate, still warm. You are told, sternly, that you are not to walk too quickly or too slowly. You must glide. Do not spill, do not speak, do not look the king in the eyes. You nod. Then you begin. Your arms tremble slightly as you walk the length of the corridor. The tray wobbles once and you steady it with your left hand while your right grips the edge like a vice. The chocolate smells thick and rich, nothing like the watery broth you drink when you're lucky. You breathe through your nose and focus on the floor. When you enter the chamber, you do not look up. The king is speaking. You don't register the words, just the tone. Lazy, amused, slightly nasal. Someone laughs. A lady tuts gently. You step forward, lower the tray onto the side table exactly where you were instructed, and step back. You do not exist.
But you did it. You leave the chamber feeling like your shoes are floating. Back in the servants' quarters, no one asks you how it went, but one older boy, Jules, claps you lightly on the back. "No spills," he says. You grin. Just a little. For lunch, you get a boiled onion and a heel of bread. It's more than usual, and you're grateful. You eat crouched near the fire with a few others. You speak softly, mostly to Henri and Jules. Elise sits nearby, her apron stained with something yellow and greasy. She hands you a bit of her crust without comment. You nod in thanks. In the afternoon, you're assigned to the Hall of Mirrors. This is new. You've never been allowed in before, not to work, certainly not to linger. The hall is Versailles' crown jewel. 357 mirrors reflecting sunlight from 17 windows, gilded statues, painted ceilings that seem to go on forever. It is magnificent. It is absurd. It is exhausting to clean. Your job is simple. Wipe the baseboards and corners, never the mirrors themselves. Only senior staff are permitted to touch the glass. Even so, your cloth is damp with condensation, and your arms are sore from bending into the curves of each decorative niche. You work in silence, with only the soft thump of footsteps echoing above you. Every now and then, you pause to glance upward. You see yourself in dozens of reflections, small, hunched, brown-haired, with a face that's hard to pin down. It's strange, being multiplied like that, as if the palace is reminding you, this is your place, everywhere and nowhere. At one point, two noblewomen enter. Their shoes click loudly on the floor, their skirts rustle like dry leaves. They don't see you, or rather, they choose not to. You freeze behind a pillar and remain still as stone. They gossip as they walk, voices high and pointed. She wore that same gown last Tuesday, I swear it. And her necklace? Paste, no question. Their words echo like bells in the grand space, bouncing off mirrors and polished marble. You stay perfectly still until they exit. Only then do you exhale and return to wiping the baseboards. That night, you go to bed aching, but alert. Something has shifted. Not dramatically, but enough. You stood near the king. You walked the Hall of Mirrors. You delivered the royal chocolate. These are not nothing. You dream of golden doors and mirrors that open into fields, of trays that carry themselves, of a version of you in finer clothes, not walking behind nobles, but beside them. You wake before dawn as always. But today, as you pull on your shirt and wrap your feet, you move with a different rhythm. You are still a servant, but for the first time, you feel like a witness.
While nobles feast on roasted capons stuffed with truffles, draped in sauces with names longer than your entire title, if you had one, you squat in a dim cellar corner, trading crusts of bread for gossip and warm breath. The palace above seems to hum with luxury, but beneath its polished skin lies a second world, and in that world, lunch for a servant boy like you rarely arrives on time, if at all. By 11, the smell of midday preparations begins to leak through the walls. Thick meat stews bubble in copper pots. Herbs crackle over coals. Butter hisses as it's dropped onto hot pans, mixing with the yeasty scent of fresh rolls and the sweet perfume of candied fruits being arranged for a marquise's pleasure. The aromas are overwhelming, designed to seduce the highest classes, but they seduce you too, even when they arrive dulled by distance and the grime of the servants' quarters. Your stomach growls at the scent of meat you won't taste, pastries you'll never touch. You've grown used to the difference between what you carry and what you consume. Your hands may touch the gilded plates, but your mouth is never invited. The rule is unspoken, but carved into every interaction. Those who serve
should never sample. Still, hunger makes clever hands. You've learned that when the kitchen is at its busiest, usually just before the grand lunch is wheeled through the corridors, there's a moment of chaos, a split-second window where eyes look elsewhere. You don't steal, no, never outright. You scavenge. A dropped crust here, a spoon licked once and discarded, the tip of a carrot that rolled off a cutting board. It's not noble, but it's survival, and it doesn't matter that the fruit was once held by a duke if it fills the gap between your ribs. The cellar has become your favorite hiding place during these brief moments of nourishment. It's not truly a cellar, not officially. It's more of a hollow space behind the laundry room, where the heat from the nearby ovens seeps through the walls and keeps the chill at bay. You crawl in through a narrow gap behind the linen baskets, careful not to be seen. You aren't the only one who knows this place, of course. Henry found it first, and he lets you stay as long as you don't talk too loudly and always share what you find.
Today, you sit across from him, each of you holding a small wedge of bread and half a dried apple. Elise is there too, curled against a rolled-up carpet, nibbling on a bit of parsnip and humming quietly to herself. It's not a song you recognize, just a string of notes that make the air feel less lonely. No one speaks for a while. There's nothing new to say. You all know what the other's day looks like. Buckets, basins, bells, and orders. The quiet is comfortable, like a well-worn coat. Then, Elise breaks it. "I saw the Dauphin today," she says, voice low. Henry snorts. "You saw the back of his shoes." "I saw his face, too," she insists. You raise your eyebrows. "He looked at you?" "No," she admits, picking at a crumb. "But I saw it. Just for a moment. He was in the garden. He was throwing bread at ducks. You imagine it. A boy like you, but in silk and satin, tossing perfectly good bread to animals that don't even say thank you. The idea makes your teeth ache." Elise shrugs. He looked bored. You wonder what it feels like to be bored. You've never had the luxury. There is always something to carry, something to scrub, someone to please. Even when you lie still at night, your brain counts towels, trays, footsteps, risks. Boredom is for people whose bellies are full. A bell rings in the hallway, short, sharp, and impatient. That's the end of lunch. You squeeze through the wall's crevice, brush the crumbs off your lap, and pull your expression back into shape. Henry groans softly, but follows. Elise hums a few more notes and then disappears down the corridor, moving like smoke between shadows. You're summoned to the laundry corridor, tasked with hauling wet linens from the steam room to the drying yard. The pile is taller than you are, damp and heavy, already smelling slightly sour. You bury your face into the corner of a sheet and hoist the load onto your back. The steam makes your curls stick to your forehead. Your arms tremble, but you keep walking. The laundry corridor is hot and humid, a kind of purgatory filled with hissing pipes and the wheeze of tired women slapping wet sheets against stone. The floor is always wet, your shoes always soaked. The air tastes of lye and lemon peel. You move carefully. Slipping here means bruises, or worse, ruined linen, which costs more than you're worth. At the drying yard, a maid named Babette helps you sling the sheets onto the line. She's missing 2 fingers on one hand, a permanent warning of what hot mangles can do. She doesn't talk much, but when she does, her voice is surprisingly kind. "You're growing fast," she says, pinning a sheet with one good hand and the stub of the other. "Soon they'll put you on stair polish." You nod. It's a promotion of sorts. More visibility, more risk, but also more food, sometimes. She eyes you sidelong. You clean. You don't complain. Keep it that way. You know what she means. The palace rewards silence and punishes noise. The louder you are, the quicker you're replaced. That evening, you're reassigned to dish duty, specifically scraping food scraps from the nobles' plates before washing. It's the closest you come to their meals. Roast duck bones still slick with fat, wilted herbs, half-eaten figs, untouched pudding with spoons plunged halfway through like monuments abandoned mid-celebration. You scrape it all into a trough for pigs. Sometimes, if no one is watching, you pluck a piece too untouched to waste. A bit of meat the size of your fingernail, a broken macaroon. Once, a whole slice of pear tart with only one bite missing. You ate it behind a door, quickly, each chew echoing in your ears like thunder. You can still taste the almond crust. Later, you help stack the plates, dozens of them, delicate and rimmed with gold. You balance them carefully. You know better than to let one slip. The last boy who dropped the porcelain bowl lost his post, and, rumor has it, his home. No one saw him again. In Versailles, shattering something expensive is like shattering the trust of God himself. As night falls, you drag your body down the side corridor to your alcove. You remove your shoes and peel off your damp stockings. One toe is bleeding again, the nail cracked in the morning and worsened over the day. You wrap it in an old strip of curtain, wincing only a little. Henri is already snoring. Elise is curled up, face turned to the wall, breathing softly. You lie down between them, your shoulder against the cold stone wall. You tuck your hands beneath your chin and close your eyes. The hunger is still there, the ache in your arms, the quiet fury in your chest when you think of the bread given to ducks, the pudding scraped into bins. But so is the pride, the private kind, the kind you don't say out loud. You did not drop the tray. You did not spill the soup. You wiped every panel twice, even the ones no one will check. You survived, and in a place like this, that's enough.
There's a saying among the laundry girls, muttered behind steam clouds and boiling vats. The nobles perfume themselves, but we know what they really smell like. You don't fully understand it at first, but by your 11th year, as your duties expand and your roots begin to include the chambers and hallways of the higher nobility, the truth of it becomes undeniable. You've been reassigned, again, this time to the morning chamber pot rounds. It's a task considered beneath the footmen and far too intimate for maids who deal in linens and lace. It's given to those who are still considered invisible but are old enough to carry something with two hands and not drop it in terror. In short, boys like you. Every morning, just before the palace begins to stir, you move through the private apartments of lesser nobles, knock softly on doors, and wait. Sometimes they leave the pot outside, covered with a linen cloth that fools no one. Other times they hand it to you directly, avoiding eye contact, as if ashamed that their bodies need such things at all. You bow each time, say nothing, and carry it away. Each pot is a universe. Some hold only urine, pale and cold. Others, well, you learn not to look too closely. You become acquainted with the varied diets of the aristocracy in ways no doctor could dream. You can tell who drank too much claret by the color, who is sick by the smell, who binged on cheese by the residue. It is a grotesque intimacy, and yet one that no one dares acknowledge. By mid-morning, you've carried 20, sometimes 30 pots down to the dumping trough behind the latrines. The smell there is unspeakable. Even the rats avoid it. But you've learned to breathe shallowly and keep your mouth closed. You hum sometimes, softly, just to create a sound that isn't splashing or gagging. It helps. No one thanks you, not once. There's a small dignity in that, you suppose. Gratitude would make the task personal. Better to be unseen than falsely pitied. One day,
as you're walking down the back stairwell with a particularly heavy pot, one from a countess who insists hers be polished after each use, you trip on a worn spot in the stone. The pot clatters. You catch it, barely. A bit of the contents sloshes onto your wrist. You freeze, heart thudding in your throat, but no one sees. You take a deep breath and continue. Back in the scullery, you scrub your arm raw. The skin burns from the lye soap, but you don't stop until your knuckles bleed. You don't cry. You haven't in years. That afternoon, you're pulled aside by the steward. His eyes scan you like he's assessing a broom for splinters. You're being sent to the Marquis de Rochefort's floor, he says. They need someone to tidy the hearths. You nod. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't wander, and for God's sake, don't look at the mirrors. You nod again, though the last instruction confuses you. The Marquis's floor is quieter than most. It smells of polish and old books, with a hint of burnt sugar. The walls are lined with portraits, ancestors with long noses and eyes that follow you down the hall. You walk carefully, holding your bundle of rags and brushes like sacred objects. His hearth is large, more decorative than functional. You kneel to sweep out the ash. It's clean already, of course. Everything here is. But appearance is everything. And ash must be swept whether it's present or not.
While you work, you catch movement from the corner of your eye. The Marquis himself is in the room. You hadn't noticed. He sits at his writing desk, quill in hand, watching you in the mirror above the mantel. Ah, that's what the steward meant. You lower your gaze, keep brushing. Your shoulders tense, your hands sweat. He doesn't speak, just watches. You finish your task as fast as you dare, rise, bow low, and leave without a word. Back in the servant hallway, you lean against the wall and let out the breath you hadn't realized you were holding. Your shirt clings to your back. Your hands shake slightly. It wasn't danger, exactly, but it wasn't comfort either. Some of the boys whisper about nobles like the Marquis, that he's too quiet, that he collects buttons from old uniforms, that he once sent a page home for sneezing during supper. You never know what's true. Rumors fill the empty spaces of Versailles like mice, everywhere, hungry and impossible to kill. Later that evening, you're called to assist with cleaning in the Duchess's music chamber. The floor there is inlaid with intricate wood designs, shaped like vines and birds. You're given a special cloth and told to polish only in the direction of the grain. You follow instructions precisely, crawling slowly across the floor as a lady plays a harp in the corner. The music is gentle, sweet, and for a moment you almost forget where you are. You let the notes soak into you like sunlight through dusty glass. But then she stops, and the spell breaks. "I can see your reflection in the harp," she says. You freeze. "It's disturbing. Please move." You bow, apologize, and shift to the far end of the room. She resumes playing. The music is just as lovely, but it no longer belongs to you. That night, in the alcove where you sleep, you whisper the melody to yourself. Henri is already snoring. Elise is curled up with her apron covering her face. You hum the notes softly, over and over, until sleep takes you. In your dream, you are the one playing. The harp fits your hands perfectly. The room is silent, not because you are invisible, but because they are listening. You wake to the sound of coughing. Someone in the servants' wing is ill again. You can hear the hacking from 3 rooms over. No one mentions it. No one will. Not unless it becomes contagious. You rise, dress, and step into the corridor. Your feet are sore. Your knees ache. But your back is straight. You have learned how to carry weariness without showing it. You retrieve your cleaning cloth, your ash brush, and your mop. You begin again. As you pass the lower pantry, you see a tray of discarded food,
bones, peels, bread heels. You hesitate. Then you step forward, pluck a bit of fig from the edge, and pop it into your mouth. It is sweet, overripe, a little sour. You chew slowly. It's the only thing you'll taste today that wasn't meant to be discarded. But you eat it anyway. And you don't feel shame. You feel, briefly, full. And then you go to fetch the next chamber pot. Because in Versailles, the filth must be carried, and someone must carry it. And today, that someone is still you.
You grow more silent with every passing week, not because your voice is failing, but because your ears have sharpened. You've learned to listen in a way few ever do, to the whispers that trail behind silk-clad ladies, to the murmurs exchanged between footmen just a little too far down the hallway, to the snatches of gossip dropped like crumbs by chambermaids who think you're too busy polishing to notice. The truth is, you notice everything now. You've been in the walls long enough to understand that Versailles is less a palace and more a machine, a brilliant, glittering contraption powered by secrets and performance. And in this machine, the smallest gears often hear the loudest ticking. It starts with an accident. You're behind a curtain in the Duchess of Nevers' salon, wiping the gilt legs of a marble table. It's a job you've done so often you could complete it blindfolded. She enters suddenly, accompanied by a nobleman you don't recognize, tall and sharp-voiced. They don't see you. Or they see you and assume you're furniture. Either way, they talk. You keep your head down, rag stilling in your hand. She knows, the Duchess says, low but intense. She suspects. That's not the same. You said the steward had burned the letters. He burned them, but that little valet, what's his name? Etienne? He saw the seal. You swore! A glass clinks. The Duchess's voice sharpens. If this gets out... There is a pause, long and heavy. The man sighs. Then we'll pin it on the chambermaid. It's what they're for. You do not move, not a twitch. You wait until their voices fade down the hall. Only then do you exhale. You have no idea what they were discussing, not exactly, but you understand the tone. You've heard it before, the low, hissing panic of people with too much to lose. After that day, you find yourself behind curtains more often. Not on purpose at first, but as you carry out your duties, you start to notice which rooms echo with soft confessions, which corners are safest for standing still just a second longer. You never eavesdrop with intention. That would be disobedience. But you clean slowly, you polish methodically, and while you do, the palace speaks. It's not always about politics or power. Sometimes it's petty. A noblewoman furious that her sister wore the same gown. A footman bragging about a kiss stolen behind the greenhouse. A bishop whispering about someone's debts, someone's affairs, someone's strange absences at Mass. But all of it paints a picture, one that you begin to carry in your head like a secret mural, slowly forming behind your eyes. There's power in knowing things others think you don't. And yet, it's a dangerous power. You never repeat what you hear. Not to Elise, not to Henri, not even to yourself. You let the words pass through you, collect inside you, but you never let them out. That's the difference between a servant who survives and one who disappears. The days begin to blur. You've entered that strange stage of growth where your body stretches faster than your muscles can adapt. Your arms feel longer. Your legs ache in the night. You knock things over more than usual, not out of clumsiness, but because you're becoming too large for the spaces that once hid you. One morning, while sweeping the floor beneath the Count of Vivonne's library chair, your shoulder brushes a vase. It wobbles. You catch it. Just barely. He looks at you for the first time in 3 years. Careful, he says, as if speaking to a disobedient dog. You bow, eyes to the floor. But after he leaves, you pause. You peer into the vase. Inside, a folded scrap of paper. You do not touch it. You do not breathe near it. But your heart beats faster, and you understand once again that everything in Versailles is two things at once: what it appears to be and what it's hiding. You begin to spend more time in the linen corridors, not for comfort, but for quiet. The smell of starch and lavender is calming in a way nothing else is. The piles of freshly folded sheets rise around you like walls, and for a few minutes each afternoon, as the laundresses boil and scrub and iron and slap fabric into shape, you sit behind a stack and close your eyes. One day, Elise finds you there. She sits beside you without asking. "You're changing," she says. You open one eye. Into what? She shrugs. Something sharper. You say nothing. You don't laugh anymore. You blink. "Not since the harp," she adds. She means the day you were told to move because your reflection disturbed a lady's performance. You hadn't thought anyone noticed. Elise gets up, brushing dust from her apron. "Don't forget to be human," she says softly, and leaves. You don't know what to do with that. You don't know what it means to be human in a place that only values shadows. Later that week, a noble drops a ring during a hallway procession. A servant girl sees it and freezes. A second later, a footman picks it up and presents it with a flourish. The noble praises him. The girl is scolded for hesitating. You take note. From that day on, you walk a little faster, stand a little straighter, keep your eyes on the floor, but your attention everywhere. That's how you hear about the Marquis's missing brooch, about the steward's secret drinking, about the Duke's bastard child hidden in the countryside, about the kitchen boy who found a letter behind the bread oven and then vanished without notice. You hear it all, and you say nothing. You're sent to work in the guest chambers the following month, a promotion of sorts. Nobles visiting from the provinces often bring their own servants, but the palace still assigns one or two of its own for appearances. That's where you come in. You fetch towels, you heat water, you light candles. And you learn that people speak more freely when they think you don't understand their words or that you won't dare repeat them. You nod when spoken to. You bow when passed. You smile only when safe. One day, a visiting countess offers you a plum. You freeze. She laughs. "You look like I asked for your liver." You take the plum, bowing low. Later, you eat it behind the stables, juice running down your wrist, the skin tart and sharp on your tongue. It is the sweetest thing you've ever tasted, not just because of its flavor, but because it was given. For no reason, no trade, no pity, just given. You think of Elise. That night, you return to the linen corridor. You find her folding sheets. "I laughed today." She raises an eyebrow. "Must have been a very funny plum." You nod. It was. She doesn't say more, just smiles, faintly, and folds another corner. You help her. Not because you're asked, but because in a palace full of lies and golden ceilings, the weight of warm linen in your hands is the only honest thing you've touched all day. As the candles burn low and the palace quiets, you return to your alcove. You lie down on the straw mat, tuck your knees to your chest, and pull your threadbare blanket over your shoulder. You fall asleep thinking not of kings or whispers, but of a plum passed from one hand to another. And in your dream, the palace is quiet, not secretive, just silent. You dream of someone looking at you and seeing not a servant,
not a shadow, not a boy with a pot in one hand and a rag in the other, but simply someone who belongs, even if just for a moment.
By 12, your spine has learned the shape of Versailles. It bends where the ceilings curve low in the servant corridors. It straightens when nobles pass. It hunches while lifting heavy buckets and flexes tight when you carry trays through narrow doorways without touching the gilded frame. Your back knows its place, even if your heart sometimes forgets. Your face is changing too. Less round now, more angles. Your hands have outgrown the child-sized cloths you once used. Your eyes, they say, look older than your age. Perhaps that's true. Perhaps that's just what happens when you spend your days watching without reacting, listening without answering, and moving without ever truly arriving anywhere. You're given new tasks this season, more delicate ones. One of them is tending to the chamber where visiting ambassadors take tea. It's not a room you imagined ever stepping into. The floor is a pale marble with golden veining, and the chairs are so fine you feel you might shatter one with your breath. There's a single tapestry on the wall, a lion and a stag locked in eternal, silent battle. You polish the corners of the tapestry frame. Never the fabric. That is for specialists. Your job, primarily, is to manage the hearth. Not to light it, that's for the fire boys, but to keep it tidy. Sweep away the ash. Fold and replace the fire screen when needed. Adjust the tongs and pokers so they always appear untouched, yet perfectly aligned. You're also to be present when guests arrive, in case something spills or needs fetching. You are to be still, silent, but ready. It is in this room, during one late morning in October, that you begin to understand the strange, dangerous intimacy of power. 3 men arrive. 2 are French, 1 is Spanish. You don't know their names. You're not told. But the steward's tone as he prepped the room made it clear, these men matter. You stand in your corner, head lowered, cloth in hand. They sit. They speak softly at first, pleasantries, shared acquaintances, a toast poured in delicate porcelain cups. You glance once. The Spaniard is younger, his hair slicked and eyes sharp. The Frenchman with the heavy wig smiles too much. The other one barely speaks. Then the mood shifts. The voices lower further, and something about their cadence tightens. I'm telling you, says the younger one, in thickly accented French, if the grain doesn't move through Marseille this month, the contract fails. It won't be the king's concern, replies the smiling man. It'll be blamed on the merchants. Always is. And the girl? The Spaniard asks. A pause. She'll say what she's told, he mutters. Or she'll stop saying anything at all. You do not move. You do not breathe. The fire crackles once loudly. All 3 men turn toward it for a moment, then continue. You sweep the ash slower, gentler, as though your stillness might somehow make you less present. When they leave, you feel something in your chest, an unease not rooted in fear, but in knowing, in being a witness to something that cannot be said, not even to yourself. You wonder what girl they meant, and whether she knows her part in the story they've already written. That night, you lie awake. You can hear Elise breathing softly nearby, and the occasional turn of Henry on the straw pallet. You stare at the wooden beam above your head and think, how many stories float above us like perfume, thick and sweet and toxic. You begin to pay closer attention to the gossip among the senior staff. Madame Therese, the first maid to the Countess of Maine, says too much when she's tired. She says she threw a candlestick at him, she tells the laundress.
right at his head. Did it hit? Missed, but he hasn't been back since. And her necklace? Gone the next day. You file it away. Then there's Claude, a page boy who talks in his sleep. You overhear him mumble something about a hidden letter, a secret pocket in a waistcoat, a rendezvous behind the garden hedge. You wonder if he even knows what his own mouth reveals in the dark. Information becomes your currency, not to use, just to know. You never speak of it, not even to Henry, especially not to Elise. Some things, you decide, are safer when folded up inside, like the linen corners you've smoothed out for years.
You're also trusted now to clean the steward's outer office. A narrow room with oak-paneled walls and a small desk where minor decisions are made. There's a shelf with ledgers you're forbidden to touch, and a drawer where you once glimpsed a sealed envelope marked only with a wax insignia. You pretend you didn't see it. But the room holds something more valuable. Voices. You're rarely alone there when you clean. Usually someone is talking nearby, just on the other side of the curtain or through the half-closed door. You don't listen on purpose, but you're always there when whispers drop. You hear about debts owed by a certain duke to a man who doesn't reside at court. You hear about a planned marriage being canceled because of a rumor no one will admit to starting. You hear about a servant girl sent away in the night, no cause given. Every word etches itself into your mind. You don't seek these things out, but they stick. They always stick. One evening, as you exit the steward's office, you pass a man you don't recognize. He's not dressed like the others. No wig, no gloves, just a dark cloak and boots that seem too clean for a tradesman. He looks at you, not through you, at you. For a second too long. You keep walking. That night, you sleep with your hand on your chest, where your linen shirt wrinkles like paper against your heart. The next morning, nothing has changed, but everything has. You still fetch water, you still polish frames, you still carry trays too heavy for one boy. But now you feel the eyes more keenly, the passing glances, the subtle nods from staff who never nodded before. You don't know if it's respect or suspicion. You don't ask. You carry on. Because what else can you do? You meet Elise in the linen corridor again. She's folding slowly, methodically. Her eyes are tired. Her hands are red from the cold water. You look different, she says, watching you over the edge of a towel. You shrug. She doesn't press. Instead, she hands you a square of honey bread wrapped in cloth. It's soft and fragrant, sticky at the edges. From the ambassador's breakfast cart, she says. No one noticed. You blink. Don't tell Henry, she adds. You sit down beside her. You eat in silence, piece by piece. And for the first time in days, you don't think about the marquise, or the chambermaid, or the girl mentioned by the men with fire in their voices. You just think about honey, and how something so sweet can exist in a place like this. Later, as you carry the last chamber pot to the latrine, you pause for a moment in the hallway. You listen, not for voices, just for silence, the kind that isn't full of secrets. You don't find it, but you keep walking. By 12, your spine has learned the shape of Versailles. It bends where the ceilings curve low in the servant corridors. It straightens when nobles pass. It hunches while lifting heavy buckets and flexes tight when you carry trays through narrow doorways without touching the gilded frame. Your back knows its place, even if your heart sometimes forgets. Your face is changing too. Less round now, more angles. Your hands have outgrown the child-sized cloths you once used. Your eyes, they say, look older than your age. Perhaps that's true. Perhaps that's just what happens when you spend your days watching without reacting, listening without answering, and moving without ever truly arriving anywhere. You're given new tasks this season, more delicate ones. One of them is tending to the chamber where visiting ambassadors take tea. It's not a room you imagined ever stepping into. The floor is a pale marble with golden veining, and the chairs are so fine you feel you might shatter one with your breath. There's a single tapestry on the wall, a lion and a stag locked in eternal, silent battle. You polish the corners of the tapestry frame, never the fabric. That is for specialists. Your job, primarily, is to manage the hearth. Not to light it, that's for the fire boys, but to keep it tidy. Sweep away the ash, fold and replace the fire screen when needed. Adjust the tongs and pokers so they always appear untouched, yet perfectly aligned. You're also to be present when guests arrive, in case something spills or needs fetching. You are to be still, silent, but ready. It is in this room, during one late morning in October, that you begin to understand the strange, dangerous intimacy of power. 3 men arrive. 2 are French, 1 is Spanish. You don't know their names, you're not told. But the steward's tone as he prepped the room made it clear. These men matter. You stand in your corner, head lowered, cloth in hand. They sit. They speak softly at first, pleasantries, shared acquaintances, a toast poured in delicate porcelain cups. You glance once. The Spaniard is younger, his hair slicked and eyes sharp. The Frenchman with the heavy wig smiles too much. The other one barely speaks. Then the mood shifts. The voices lower further, and something about their cadence tightens. "I'm telling you," says the younger one in thickly accented French, "if the grain doesn't move through Marseille this month, the contract fails. It won't be the king's concern. It'll be blamed on the merchants. Always is." "And the girl?" the Spaniard asks. A pause. "She'll say what she's told," the man mutters, "or she'll stop saying anything at all." You do not move. You do not breathe. The fire crackles once, loudly. All 3 men turn toward it for a moment, then continue.
You hear about debts owed by a certain duke to a man who doesn't reside at court. You hear about a planned marriage being canceled because of a rumor no one will admit to starting. You hear about a servant girl sent away in the night, no cause given. Every word etches itself into your mind. You don't seek these things out, but they stick. They always stick. One evening, as you exit the steward's office, you pass a man you don't recognize. He's not dressed like the others. No wig, no gloves, just a dark cloak and boots that seem too clean for a tradesman. He looks at you. Not through you, at you. For a second too long, you keep walking. That night, you sleep with your hand on your chest, where your linen shirt wrinkles like paper against your heart. The next morning, nothing has changed, but everything has. You still fetch water. You still polish frames. You still carry trays too heavy for one boy. But now you feel the eyes more keenly. The passing glances. The subtle nods from staff who never nodded before. You don't know if it's respect or suspicion. You don't ask. You carry on. Because what else can you do? You meet Elise in the linen corridor again. She's folding slowly, methodically. Her eyes are tired. Her hands are red from the cold water. "You look different," she says, watching you over the edge of a towel. You shrug. She doesn't press. Instead, she hands you a square of honey bread wrapped in cloth. It's soft and fragrant, sticky at the edges. "From the ambassador's breakfast cart," she says. No one noticed. You blink. "Don't tell Henry," she adds. You sit down beside her. You eat in silence, piece by piece. And for the first time in days, you don't think about the marquis, or the chambermaid, or the girl mentioned by the men with fire in their voices. You just think about honey, and how something so sweet can exist in a place like this. Later, as you carry the last chamber pot to the latrine, you pause for a moment in the hallway. You listen, not for voices, just for silence. The kind that isn't full of secrets. You don't find it, but you keep walking.
You sweep the ash slower, gentler, as though your stillness might somehow make you less present. When they leave, you feel something in your chest, an unease not rooted in fear, but in knowing, in being a witness to something that cannot be said, not even to yourself. You wonder what girl they meant, and whether she knows her part in the story they've already written. That night, you lie awake. You can hear Elise breathing softly nearby, and the occasional turn of Henri on the straw pallet. You stare at the wooden beam above your head and think, how many stories flow above us like perfume, thick and sweet and toxic? You begin to pay closer attention to the gossip among the senior staff. Madame Therese, the first maid to the Countess of Maine, says too much when she's tired. They say she threw a candlestick at him, she tells the laundress, right at his head. Did it hit? Missed, but he hasn't been back since. And her necklace? Gone the next day. You file it away. Then there's Claude, a page boy who talks in his sleep. You overhear him mumble something about a hidden letter, a secret pocket in a waistcoat, a rendezvous behind the garden hedge. You wonder if he even knows what his own mouth reveals in the dark. Information becomes your currency, not to use, just to know. You never speak of it, not even to Henri, especially not to Elise. Some things, you decide, are safer when folded up inside like the linen corners you've smoothed for years. You're also trusted now to clean the steward's outer office, a narrow room with oak-paneled walls and a small desk where minor decisions are made. There's a shelf with ledgers you're forbidden to touch, and a drawer where you once glimpsed a sealed envelope marked only with a wax insignia. You pretend you didn't see it. But the room holds something more valuable: voices. You're rarely alone there when you clean. Usually someone is talking nearby, just on the other side of the curtain or through the half-closed door. You don't listen on purpose, but you're always there when whispers drop.
It's early spring when your body finally reminds you that it's still made of flesh and not wood and fabric. You've pushed through winters before, woken in frost-bitten corridors, hauled buckets through snow-dusted courtyards, scrubbed marble with raw knuckles as your breath curled in little ghosts before your face. But this season, something different happens. You faint. It's not dramatic. There is no cry, no tumble of trays, or shattering porcelain. You're in the linen room, folding towels with your usual mechanical rhythm, when your knees simply stop holding you. Your vision narrows, the ceiling tilts, and you slide down, almost gracefully, into the warm piles of fabric. Someone shouts, "Elise!" Then darkness. When you wake, you're lying on your side in the back of the laundry room, head resting on a balled-up apron, and your tongue feels like cloth. The air smells of wet stone and burned starch. A maid dabs your forehead with vinegar. Another is fanning you with a piece of parchment. You hear murmuring, concerned but cautious. You've learned to recognize the tone. They're not worried about you. They're worried about what your weakness might cost them. After all, no one wants to be the girl who let a servant boy die beside the wash tub. That sort of thing draws attention. You sit up too quickly and nearly faint again. "Lie still," Elise says, pressing her palm against your chest. "You've been out for minutes." I blink. "What happened?" "You collapsed." "I didn't mean to." She gives you a look so dry it could crack granite. "No one ever means to, but you haven't eaten properly in days." You try to argue, but your stomach betrays you with a loud, empty gurgle.
They let you rest a little longer. Then the moment passes. The sympathy cools. By afternoon, you're back on your feet, but not quite the same. Your joints ache more than they should. Your breath shortens during long stair climbs, and the back of your eyes feel bruised when you wake. You're not dying, not yet, but something inside is dimmer, a wick burning too low, a signal. The following days, you're moved to less visible tasks. The steward says it's because you need rest, but you know the real reason. No one wants a servant who might faint in front of the nobility. That sort of thing makes people uncomfortable. Illness is meant to stay behind the walls like bad smells and dirty water. You're given light work in the back kitchens, mostly peeling things. Mountains of carrots, buckets of turnips, piles of onions so large they make your vision blur for reasons beyond the sting. The cook is a stout, sweating man named Gaspard who never remembers your name but grunts in your direction whenever he needs something done. He doesn't talk much, which suits you. He lets you sit on a low stool while you peel, which is his version of kindness. You share a bench with Henry one day, who's now working as a runner between the pantry and the larder. He notices your slouched posture. "You look like that cabbage you're holding," he says. "I feel worse," you reply. He doesn't laugh, he just nods. "I think something's broken inside me," you say. "Could be. I don't know what." He shrugs. "Most things break in here eventually." There's no judgment in his voice, just experience. That night, Elise presses a dried fig into your palm. It's not much, but it's more than nothing.
You chew it slowly, each bite a small comfort. The seeds crunch between your teeth like little promises. By week's end, you're feeling slightly stronger, not well, but upright. And that, in Versailles, is what counts. You're reassigned again, this time to a new steward who manages the lower salons and guest suites. He's thinner than the others, with a voice like a snapped twig and a habit of sniffing before each sentence. But he's efficient, and he keeps his punishments verbal, which makes him popular among the older staff. Your duties now include setting up for visiting guests, lighting fires, dusting chaise lounges, replacing flowers. The flowers are your favorite part, not because you know their names, but because of their smell. They remind you there's a world beyond this one, a world with soil and rain and bees, a world where people grow things instead of polishing what's already dead. You begin to take extra time arranging them. Not too long, just enough to tuck the stems in at better angles, to remove wilted petals, to give the bouquets a bit more life. No one notices, but you like to imagine that the rooms breathe easier because of it. One morning, while placing a vase on a writing desk, you notice something odd. A piece of paper folded beneath the ink blotter. It's not your place to read, of course, but your eyes catch a line before you can help it. They suspect the shipment was short. Say nothing for now. You blink. Then you set the blotter back and leave the room. Your hands shake for the next hour. Because this isn't the first letter you've seen lately, just the first one that mentions something real, something that might matter. You remember the masked men, the whispered names, the steward's drawer that was never quite locked. You begin to see it all as part of a pattern. But you keep silent, because what else can you do? You begin to mark things in your memory as if writing your own private ledger. Not for power, not for leverage, just for truth. In a place built on performance, truth feels like a rare object worth hiding. One night, Elise finds you sitting in the corridor behind the tapestry room. "You're pale again," she says, sitting beside you. "I'm tired." "You're always tired." "I think they're doing something wrong," you whisper. She looks at you. Her eyes are dark, soft but sharp. "Of course they are," she says. "They always are." You pause. Why doesn't anyone stop it? She leans back against the wall. Because no one down here gets to stop anything. We just carry it. The filth, the silver, the secrets. They give. We hold. You nod. She reaches over, tucks a curl behind your ear. But sometimes, she adds, we remember, and that matters. You don't know if it does, not really, but her voice is warm, and her hand lingers at your temple for just a second longer than necessary. You close your eyes. You dream that night of a garden, not the trimmed perfection of Versailles, but a wild, blooming space where nothing is measured, nothing is pruned. You walk through it barefoot, the earth soft beneath you. No one calls your name. No one tells you where to go. The air smells like lavender and freedom. When you wake, you still taste soil on your tongue. You wash your face. You tie your shoes. You begin again. Because in Versailles, beginnings are all you have, and endings, when they come, are always quiet.
There's something about winter in Versailles that makes the truth harder to ignore. Perhaps it's the way the chill creeps through the walls no matter how many fires are lit, or how the wind whistles through the high corridors as if mourning something lost. Or maybe it's just that, in the cold, illusions grow brittle. The silks still shimmer, the gold leaf still glows, but the people underneath begin to fray, and the palace, for all its splendor, is not built for warmth. This particular winter is cruel. The pipes freeze, the floors crack with cold. Water in basins turns to ice before sunrise. The kitchen fires work double time, but the heat never reaches the servants' corridors. You wake each morning with your hands so stiff you can barely tie your shoes, your breath a white cloud above the straw mat where you sleep. The frost bites your fingers and lips and knees and doesn't let go, not even when you're moving. You're nearly 14 now, but you feel older. Not just in your bones, but in the way you carry yourself. You speak less, smile less, move more carefully. You've grown into your height, your limbs lean and angular, your eyes darker from nights of waking too early and sleeping too little. One morning, you slip on a patch of ice while hauling a bucket of kindling across the courtyard. You land hard, knees first, then elbows. The wood scatters, skidding in every direction. You stay down for a moment, not because it hurts, though it does, but because you're tired. Then, without thinking, you laugh. Not a big laugh, just a small, sharp huff that escapes your throat like steam. Because of course the firewood would spill. Of course your knees would bruise. That's the story you've always been part of. Henry helps you gather the logs. Neither of you speak. His breath comes out ragged from the cold. Your fingers burn as they move. Later that day, you hear that a maid slipped near the queen's chambers and shattered her ankle. She's gone now. No one says where, no one asks. Versailles doesn't mourn its broken pieces, it replaces them. That night, you dream of a fire that never needs to be fed. You wake with your teeth aching from the cold.
In the weeks that follow, you're transferred to a new set of duties. Sweeping and shoveling snow from the noble entrances. The front ones, the grand ones. Not the servant doors behind the kitchens or the carriage passages in the side wings, but the actual marble stairs where noble feet descend into their carriages or step delicately into court. It is an honor, you're told, a sign of trust. It is also miserable. You begin your mornings long before dawn, scraping packed snow into buckets, flinging it off the steps, laying fresh straw, brushing away slush with stiff brooms. Your boots soak through within minutes, your fingers go numb. Sometimes you pause just to press your hands to your chest, trying to warm them with your own thin heat. One morning, a duchess steps out while you're still brushing the stairs. She stops when she sees you, half frozen, your hair crusted with frost, your hands red and raw. "You there," she says. "You look like death." You bow. "Yes, madame." She sniffs. "Get someone else to finish. You'll melt on the floor." You nod. "Yes, madame." But there is no someone else. So you finish the stairs anyway, alone, after she's gone. You've learned by now not to expect sense from those who live above the snow. In the afternoons, you return to indoor work, mostly in the guest corridors, which are colder than usual, but still warmer than the wind-whipped steps outside. You polish handles, arrange fireplace tongs, refill candle sconces with fresh wax, and every now and then, you pause in front of the mirrors. Not to admire yourself, that's not something you've ever done, but just to confirm you're still there. You've changed. Not dramatically. You still wear the same rough shirt, the same patched trousers. Your face is still pale, your shoulders still hunched from habit. But there's something in your eyes now, something that wasn't there before. You wonder if it's hardness, or maybe just endurance. One evening, while helping restock the wine cellars, you slip away for a few minutes and press your palm against a massive stone wall at the rear of the chamber. The stones are old, cold, older than you, older than the king. You whisper into the cracks, "I'm still here." Just to say it aloud, just to prove it. That same week, you're called to help clean a guest chamber that hasn't been used in months. The fire hasn't been lit, the sheets are stiff with dust, but the window, strangely, has been opened.
Snow has drifted in, piling against the sill, forming little frozen dunes on the floor. The steward is furious. Who opened it? No one answers. You do not speak, because you know. Elise opened it. You saw her the day before, carrying a towel too thin for the weather, her cheeks pinched red, her eyes glassy. You heard her whisper to herself in the corridor, something about air, about needing to breathe. And you understand. Sometimes a window is the only way out. You clean the room, sweep up the snow, close the window. You say nothing. That night, Elise doesn't come to the linen corridor. She doesn't appear at breakfast the next morning either. By evening, you know, she's gone. No one says where or why. The older staff avoid your eyes. Henri doesn't speak. You find her name scratched faintly into the wood beam above your pallet. Not large, just 4 letters. E-L-I-S-E. You trace it with your finger, then stop. You don't cry. Not because you're strong, but because crying feels too loud for a girl who once folded towels so quietly, who once gave you a piece of honey bread and told you not to forget you were still human. You don't forget. You keep working. You polish a little more carefully, fold a little neater, say yes with a little more weight in your chest. One morning, as you're laying out towels in the salon of a visiting noblewoman, you notice a scrap of paper on the floor beneath the chair. You kneel, pick it up, begin to set it aside, but then you notice something. It's a letter, half of it, torn at the fold. You can only read a few lines. Until the girl is secure, too close to the kitchens, she may have heard. You fold the paper without looking further. You tuck it into your pocket. You finish arranging the towels, and when you leave the room, you press the folded scrap into the crack behind the tapestry near the stairs. You press it deep, then you walk away. You don't know if it's about Elise, but you do know that some things should not disappear, even if no one ever finds them, even if no one ever knows. That night, you sit on the edge of your straw mat and look at the beam above you. You trace the name again, not with your finger, but in your mind. Then you lie down and you dream of an open window, of air that doesn't sting, of snow that doesn't silence.
The palace never asks where they've gone. Not the ones who vanish, not the ones who slip away in the night, not the ones who stop showing up to polish brass or carry linens. It simply exhales, smooths its skirts, and closes the empty space like it was never there. Versailles abhors disorder. Absences are just rearrangements. You know this now. You've learned to stop looking for them. Elise is gone, and no one says her name aloud. The linen corridor echoes differently without her humming. The folding is quicker, less careful. The towels stack higher, but never quite as evenly. And yet, the palace keeps turning. It always does. You're nearly 14 and a half. Your voice has begun to deepen slightly, though you rarely speak enough for anyone to notice. Your limbs are longer, your steps heavier. There's a weight to you now, not just in your bones, but in your silence. The winter drags on. The snow outside turns from white to gray, compacted into cold stone by cartwheels and servant boots. The courtyards are slick with frozen muck, and the breath of everyone you pass hangs in the air like fogged secrets. You've begun helping in the outer kitchens during the evenings. Not cooking, never that, but cleaning, mostly. The outer kitchens are where the food is prepared before it's beautified for noble eyes. It's where meats are gutted, vegetables peeled, pots blackened with flame. There's blood here, and grease, and honest labor. You like it more than most places. Here, things are straightforward. The cook bellows, the butcher swears, the scullery girls sing off-key while scrubbing pans. The heat is real. The knives are sharp. The food smells are rich, unperfumed by rose water or cinnamon. The people are rough, but clear. No one pretends the work isn't filthy, and no one treats you like a ghost. You find that you breathe easier in the smoke and fat. Sometimes you stay past your assigned time just to feel your fingers again, to let your skin thaw beside the oven. Gaspard, the same burly cook who once grunted your name wrong every time, now just calls you boy, but with less disdain. One evening, he tosses you the end of a sausage. Too ugly for the platter, he says. You nod and take it outside. You sit on the back stoop, scarfing it down in the dark while the stars peek through the thinning clouds above the treetops. It's cold, but not unbearable. The sausage is salty, smoky, glorious. You don't tell anyone. You just chew slowly, eyes half closed, savoring each bite. It's the best thing you've eaten in weeks. Back in the kitchens, Gaspard raises an eyebrow when you return. You say nothing. He doesn't either. But the next night, he tosses you a heel of bread slathered in duck fat. Looks like the king's scraps, doesn't it? You nod. You eat that one even slower. You begin to notice small things. That Gaspard's left leg drags slightly when he's tired. That the scullery girl with the ragged braid, Josette, you think, is missing part of her thumb. That the oven door is always warm, even when the fire is low. That the bread guy always counts one roll too few just in case someone's hiding behind a barrel. You notice because it's what you do. Because your brain won't stop collecting pieces. It's a habit now, a reflex. And so, when something changes, you're the first to see it. It starts with a visitor. A man with a silver brooch and a stiff black coat. Not a noble, not a cook, not a priest. Something in between. He moves like someone who knows which floorboards squeak. He smiles like someone who never means it. He's here for an inventory, they say. Of what? No one knows. He watches people, makes notes, asks strange questions. Who sleeps where?
Who does the deliveries? Who works near the royal quarters after sundown? You aren't questioned, but you see him watching you. Once, you catch his eyes in the reflection of a copper pot. He doesn't look away. You do. The kitchen staff are quieter after that. Jokes die mid-sentence. Laughter becomes rare. You keep your head low and your hands busy. You hear things. A footman has been dismissed. No reason given. A laundry girl was found sneaking letters for a courtier. Someone says there are new guards posted at the south gate, unmarked, no crests. The palace hums differently now. Not louder, just tighter, like a string pulled too far. One night you find Henri outside, crouched behind the stable, his hands buried in his coat, face pale. He looks up when you approach. "Do you think we'll ever leave?" he asks. You frown. "Leave?" "Versailles," he whispers. "Get out. Live somewhere else. Be something." You sit beside him. You don't answer. He shrugs. "Sometimes I think I'll climb the wall," he says. You glance at the wall. It's high, topped with iron spikes. He sees your look. "I know, I wouldn't make it. Just, sometimes I think about it." You nod. "Me too." You sit in silence a while. When you return to the corridor, you find a folded note tucked into the corner of your blanket. It says nothing, just a small drawing, 2 boots beside a wall. You don't ask who left it. You hide it in your shirt. The next morning, a scullery maid is gone. Her name was Marianne. She used to hum lullabies when she thought no one was listening. No one mentions her. You listen for her songs, but they're gone too. Later that day, you're assigned to help prepare the king's midday table. You don't serve it. That honor belongs to others, but you help carry the dishes from the final prep station to the antechamber. You move carefully, silently, always one pace behind. The platters gleam, the silver bowls catch the light. The smell of roasted pheasant makes your mouth water. You set the tray down, bow, and step back. And there, in the polished lid of a tureen, you see your reflection, thinner than last month. Tired, but steady, still standing, still here. You breathe in. The steward nods to you. You return to the corridor. Later, in the linen room, you find another note tucked under your folded towel. This one says, in careful letters, "She knew too much. You're next." No signature, no explanation, just 7 words. You burn it in the hearth, without flinching. But the words follow you all night. When you sleep, you dream of the wall again, of snow piled high, of Elise standing on the other side, arms open. You try to run, but your legs don't move. You wake in a sweat. The fire is out. The corridor is dark. You listen, not for guards, not for whispers, but for something gentler. A song, a name, a memory that still means warmth. It doesn't come, but you rise anyway, because Versailles never stops, and neither do you. You're nearly 15 when it happens. Not a catastrophe, not a death, just a glimpse. So brief and quiet that it could almost be dismissed. But you don't dismiss things anymore. You file them, weigh them, store them in the quiet vault at the back of your mind, where all the things no one dares speak aloud are carefully shelved. It begins with music. Not harpsichord, not lute, not one of those overly delicate melodies that trickle down from the salons during the day. This is different. It's raw. A violin played not for show, but for self. You hear it late one evening as you're walking the inner corridor between the laundry and the pantry, an errand you weren't meant to run, but agreed to take for a boy with a blistered heel. The sound draws you toward the storage alcove beside the tapestry hallway. It's not a place known for company. It stores extra chairs, broken candlesticks, and crates of things no one has the time or rank to repair. But tonight, it also contains a shadow. Slim, hunched over something, with a bow in one hand and strings under the other. A girl. You recognize her. Not by name, but by posture. One of the junior maids, you think, from the West Wing. She doesn't see you. Or maybe she does, but doesn't care. She plays like she's alone. Like the instrument is the only thing keeping her from falling apart. You stay just long enough to hear the last note. Then you leave before she can stop playing, before the magic breaks. You don't mention it to anyone. You don't go back, but you carry that sound with you for days. Its strange sadness, its rough honesty, its refusal to pretend. Versailles never taught you what music could be when no one's watching. In the weeks that follow, your world becomes smaller. Not physically. You still move through endless corridors, up stairwells, down to cellars, across frozen courtyards. But emotionally, the list of people you trust, the list of spaces that feel safe, the number of thoughts you allow yourself to say aloud, all of it tightens like a string wound too close to snapping. The stew ladle goes missing from the lower kitchen. A maid is blamed. She cries and says she never saw it. 2 days later, she's gone.
A footman knocks over a vase and doesn't report it. The next morning, he's scrubbing the latrines instead of delivering wine. No explanation, just reassignment. The man in the black coat with the silver brooch still walks the halls. Less often now, but he appears at strange times, in places he shouldn't be. Once, you see him standing in the garden, alone at dawn. Once, you pass him just as he's exiting the linen records room, even though he has no duties related to linens. He nods to you. You don't return the gesture. Henri notices your silence. "You've stopped laughing again," he says one night. You shrug. "I liked when you laughed. Made this place seem less like a grave." You don't answer. But later, as you polish the iron handles on the cellar door, you smile. Just slightly. Just enough for yourself. Your tasks now rotate between the upper kitchens and the lower salons. You're seen more often by nobles. Not spoken to, of course, but seen. That alone is a risk. There are rules, unwritten ones, about how visible someone like you is allowed to be. Too much, and people begin to notice. Too little, and people forget you exist when it matters most. One afternoon, while setting up a table in a seldom-used drawing room, you find a letter beneath a pile of folded cloth napkins. It's addressed simply, "To my dearest," though I have never said so aloud. You glance at the handwriting. Elegant. Sharp. But you don't read further. You return it. You always return what doesn't belong to you. That's the rule you set for yourself after a lease. But that night, you wonder about it, about whoever wrote it, and whoever it was meant for, about what people are allowed to say when no one hears them, and what it means to be someone's dearest, silently. A storm comes. Rain first, soaking, endless, relentless, then hail, loud, furious, sudden. It batters the palace roofs like cannon fire. Shutters bang against window frames. Chimneys wail. You're assigned to help secure the greenhouse windows. You and 3 others race through the inner courtyards, clutching hammers and ropes, soaked to the skin before the second courtyard is even crossed. You don't complain. No one does. There's no point. Inside the greenhouse, the air is thick with the scent of wet soil and citrus. The trees sway, their roots moaning in the earth. You climb a ladder and begin tying down the upper panes with cord. Your fingers slip. Rope burns your palm. Water drips into your eyes. Then lightning flashes, and for a split second, you see your reflection in the glass. You look like a stranger, pale, dripping.
eyes wide and wild. You blink, and it's gone.
The storm rages all night. The roof leaks. The lower kitchens flood. A chimney collapses in the southeast wing. 2 valets are injured. One of them won't wake up. The palace shifts afterward, subtly, like an animal limping on a hidden wound. People speak in shorter sentences. Orders are barked with less patience. Meals are prepared more quickly. Silver is polished twice as long. It's as if everyone has realized all at once that the palace is not invincible. You already knew that. Weeks later, during your late evening chore rounds, you're called into the lower guest parlor. A noblewoman is there, seated alone at a table. She doesn't look up as you enter. She merely points to the hearth. "Stoke it," she says, her voice soft and brittle. You kneel by the fire, add logs, use the poker to arrange the embers. The heat stings your face. Behind you, she sighs. "I used to play violin, you know." You freeze. She continues, as though speaking to herself. "Before my marriage, before all this." You don't speak. You're not supposed to. But she glances at you. You look like someone who listens. You lower your head. She smiles faintly. That's the most dangerous kind. You don't reply. You finish your task, rise, bow. As you turn to go, she says, "Would you like the pear?" You pause. She holds one out, green and perfect, still with a leaf attached, from the silver dish beside her elbow. Your hands shake slightly as you take it. "Thank you," you whisper. She nods. You leave before your legs forget how to walk. Later, behind the stables, you eat the pear in silence. It's the softest thing you've ever tasted. You remember her voice, the way she said, "Before my marriage," and you wonder what her music sounded like. Maybe it was like the girl in the alcove, maybe not, but you hope she still plays somewhere in her mind. That night, you sit by the hearth in the linen corridor. The flames are low. Henri is asleep nearby. The blankets rustle softly. A mouse scurries along the far wall. You reach into your coat and pull out the drawing Elise left you, the one with the 2 boots and the wall. You unfold it. On the back, you write a word. Just one. Still. Then you fold it again, tuck it back into your pocket, and lie down. The night is cold, but you felt colder. Versailles is quiet for now, but you're still here. It happens during supper prep. You're in the lower kitchen, hunched over a cauldron so wide you could lie inside it. Steam curls from the broth, heavy with root vegetables, the smell of salted pork, and the occasional whisper of bay leaf. The kitchen is a cacophony. Spoons clatter, firewood crackles, someone sneezes violently into their apron, and Gaspard bellows at a scullion boy for salting the eggs twice. You're stirring with a wooden paddle almost taller than you, your arms sore from the repetition. When you feel it, something give, a small, painless pop in your mouth. You pause, blink, and spit instinctively over your shoulder. There it is, a tooth. Your first molar. Tiny, pale, slightly tinged with broth. It lands squarely on the stone floor and skitters under the counter with a faint clink. You stare at the spot where it disappeared, confused for a second. Then you lean the paddle against the cauldron, wipe your hands on your trousers, and crouch down to find it. Not because you want to keep it. You just feel like you ought to. Like this moment means something, though you're not sure what. You don't find the tooth. It's gone, swallowed by the shadows beneath the oven. You return to stirring. The broth swirls, golden and thick. Bits of carrot bob like forgotten thoughts. You don't say anything. No one noticed. Or if they did, they don't care. A tooth lost in a kitchen isn't news in Versailles. Later, when the dishes are being stacked for service, Josette bumps your elbow. She nods toward your cheek. You're bleeding. You touch your tongue to the gap, taste iron and salt. Must have been the soup, you murmur. She shrugs, already walking away. You're alone again, as always, but now minus one tooth. You mark the passing of time by your own slow changes. Your hands are calloused in new places. Your knees ache more often. Your voice, when you do use it, has dropped to a timbre you don't recognize. The other boys treat you like an elder now, though you're still just 15. They ask you how to hold a tray without shaking, how to tell when stew is burning, how to lie convincingly when the steward demands to know who broke the wine decanter. You never teach them to lie well, just quietly.
Sometimes Henry jokes that you're going to become head servant one day. The way you notice things, the way you remember every corridor, every corner, every loose floorboard. You laugh at that, not because it's funny, but because it's sad. You don't want to rise in Versailles. You just want to survive it. And lately, even that feels like a luxury. A cold settles into your chest one week. Nothing dramatic, just a scratchy throat, a heaviness behind your eyes, a persistent cough you try to muffle with your sleeve. You keep working. Of course. Everyone does. Rest is a privilege afforded only to porcelain and princes. You sweat through your linen shirt as you scrub marble floors. You shiver as you carry trays through drafty corridors. The cough deepens, shakes your ribs when it comes. One morning, you cough so hard while polishing a doorknob that a fleck of blood appears on your palm. You wipe it on your trousers. You don't tell anyone. Your tasks shift again. Now you're helping with evening fires in the nobles' chambers. You carry logs from the lower stack to the upper floor, lay them carefully in ornate grates, strike flint until the kindling catches. You've learned not to look too long at the decorations, the painted ceilings, the velvet cushions, the way the candlelight makes the gold trim look like it's breathing. It's a different planet up here, but you're not part of it. You're just the shadow that makes the fire happen. In one chamber, you pause longer than usual. The lady is absent, the fire untouched, the scent of perfume still lingering like a ghost over the cold pillows. A book lies open on the side table. You glance at the title. Latin. You don't understand it. But you trace the gold lettering on the spine with one finger anyway. That night, when no one's watching, you find a page torn from a book tucked into the firewood pile. Someone must have tossed it by accident or on purpose. It has a drawing on it, an etching of a tree, twisted and bare, with birds in flight around it. Below, in tiny letters, Et etiam ad aboribus, non omnibus spes est. You don't know the words, but you take the page anyway. Fold it carefully. Hide it in your coat. You sleep with it pressed against your chest. Your dreams grow strange. In them, you walk the halls of Versailles alone, but the palace is upside down. Chandeliers grow from the floor. The sky is under your feet. The nobles wear masks of glass, and when they smile, teeth fall out. You keep losing things in the dream. A boot, a tooth, a name. Each time you bend to retrieve something, the ground recedes, just slightly, as if Versailles itself is laughing at you. You wake with your heart racing, coughing into your sleeve, staring at the ceiling until the chill of the corridor becomes real again. You go to work anyway. You always do.
One day, the king passes you. Not close, just through the hall beyond the mirror gallery. You're sweeping ash into a bucket, kneeling beside the hearth. You hear the click of heels, the rustle of silk,
The murmur of voices. You keep your eyes low, but you see the hem of his coat. Bright, clean, too clean for this world. The king does not glance your way, but his shadow touches your hand as he passes. It's a small thing, but you feel it. You finish your sweeping slowly that day. Later, you find a coin someone dropped in the corridor. It's old, worn nearly smooth, probably worthless, but you keep it. Because even in a place like Versailles, sometimes something small still belongs to you. That evening, back in the laundry wing, Henri pulls you aside. He whispers, "They found something behind the south tapestry." Your stomach tightens. What? A letter, torn in half, with names. You blink. He doesn't say more. But you know which letter he means. The one you tucked away. You thought it had been forgotten, disintegrated by time or eaten by moths. But now it's been found, and it has names. You and Henri exchange a glance. Neither of you says a word, but in that glance is 1,000 possible endings. You work through the night, extra chores, extra silence, eyes behind your back. You keep your head down, but your heart won't follow. It rises, beats loudly in your ears. The tooth is still missing. The cough won't stop. Your hands are cracked open from the soap. Your stomach is a ghost, but your heart still pounds, like it wants out, like it knows something you don't. As you carry kindling through the lower corridor, you pause by the tapestry, the one where the letter was hidden. You brush your fingers across the fabric. It's smooth now, empty, no trace. But you hear something, deep in the walls. A mouse? A whisper? A name? You can't tell. You walk on. The fire waits. The nobles are cold. And you, well, you're still here. Toothless, coughing, tired beyond words. But still.
You wake in the dark, not because someone kicks your feet or calls your name, not because of footsteps or fire bells or mice in the flower bin, but because your body no longer trusts sleep to keep it safe. It's the cough again, the same dull, dragging one, but deeper now, tighter. It wraps around your chest like someone cinching a belt from the inside out. You sit up slowly, careful not to rattle the cot. Henri stirs, mutters something in a dream, then rolls away. You envy him, the ease with which he drifts into rest, the soft murmur of forgotten words spilling from his lips, as though the world doesn't press into his ribs all day long. The candle has long burned out. The linen storeroom where you sleep smells of starch and damp stone. You pull the thin blanket around your shoulders and breathe through your nose to quiet the rattle in your throat. It doesn't work. You cough again, softly, into your sleeve, and feel something loosen, warm and wet. It's not the first time you've coughed up blood. It won't be the last. You don't panic. What would be the point? Instead, you swing your legs over the cot, pull your boots on with the practiced silence of someone who's learned to be invisible, and rise to begin the day that hasn't yet started. Outside, the corridor is cold and still. You pass other sleeping forms tucked along the walls, servants, stable hands, 2 footmen from the guest wing whose names you don't know, but whose snores you've catalogued like a watchman tracks stars. The palace breathes deeply in its sleep, sighing through stone and wood. You head for the scullery first. That's where you always start now. There's comfort in repetition. The stone sink is frozen again. You fetch water from the barrel instead, your fingers aching from the chill. You light the hearth, slowly, carefully, dry twigs first, then the smallest pieces of coal. The fire catches with a small hiss.
You sit by it for a moment, letting the heat curl around your bones like a tired dog seeking your lap. This is the best part of the day, when no one is watching, when the palace hasn't yet remembered its cruelty. You sip water from a tin cup. You take shallow breaths. You wait. And then, like it always does, it begins. The scurrying, the bells, the shouts, the hollow knock of wooden clogs against polished floors, the world stirring into motion around you. You rise again and disappear into the gears of Versailles.
You're taller now. Not much, but enough to notice how the sleeves pinch and the shoes don't fit quite right. You're still small enough to be overlooked, which has always been a kind of shield, but not so small that the nobles assume you're harmless anymore. You've grown into that awkward in-between. Too old to be pitied, too young to be useful. They don't know what to do with you, so they push you where they don't want to look. This week, that means the coal cellars, the lowest level, beneath even the kitchens and storerooms. You didn't know it existed until yesterday. It smells like ash and damp cloth, like regret and forgotten things. Your job is to carry buckets of coal up to the hearth rooms, a task that sounds simple until you do it for 6 hours with little rest. The buckets are heavy, the stairs endless, the dust choking. By the third trip, your arms feel like they're full of gravel. By the sixth, you can't feel them at all. And still, no one thanks you. No one even nods. You're a ghost again, moving through rooms like smoke. Sometimes, nobles step around you as if you're part of the architecture. Sometimes, they don't see you at all. You wonder what would happen if you collapsed in the middle of the grand corridor, if you dropped the bucket, sprawled across the tiles, coughing blood. Would anyone notice? Would they step over you like a spilled vase? You don't test the theory, but you think about it. More than once. At night, you try to remember your mother's voice. Not the words, those have faded, but the tone. The way she would hum sometimes while folding linens, or the rhythm of her breath when she carried you against her chest in the first year of your life. That muffled heartbeat, just beneath the fabric, like a distant drum calling you home.
You remember how her hands always smelled faintly of lavender water, even after scrubbing floors. You remember the way she laughed once when you asked if nobles had shadows too. You don't remember when she left, or if she did. Maybe she just dissolved, like so many others, into the quiet machinery of the palace. One morning, you think you see her. Just a glimpse. A woman passing in the far corridor, tall, hair tucked under a scarf, carrying a basket of pressed napkins. You freeze. Call out, softly. She doesn't turn. The echo swallows your voice, and she vanishes around the corner, like smoke drawn through a chimney. You run, briefly. Turn the corner. Nothing. Just air. A broom leaning against the wall. A draft that carries the scent of old starch, and something like memory. You don't tell Henri. You don't mention it to anyone. Because what would they say? They'd say you imagined it. Maybe you did. But maybe she's still somewhere in these walls. Just like you. The next morning, you're reassigned again, back to the fire stoking, but this time in the opera salon. You've only seen it once before, during a cleaning shift. A high-ceilinged, echoing cathedral to sound, lined with gold trim and red velvet. The stage is enormous, empty for now. The musicians are gone, and the chairs are covered in white cloth to keep the dust away. You enter quietly, carry the logs to the hearth, kneel and arrange them, and then you allow yourself a single indulgence. You look up, at the ceiling, painted with clouds and cherubs and dancing mythological beings who've never scraped their knuckles on a cold bucket in their life. At the chandelier, made of crystal and light, suspended like a star just about to fall. At the stage, wide and waiting. You whisper something. Not a prayer, not a curse. Just a word you haven't said in months. Please. You don't even know what you're asking for. But you say it anyway. Because the silence is so loud here, and you feel so small in the middle of it. The fire catches. You finish your job, you leave. But you walk differently after that. Not taller, not faster, just a little less invisible. Just enough that when you pass the kitchen doors that evening, Gaspard sees you and nods. And when Henri bumps your shoulder at supper, he says, "You're dreaming again." You don't deny it. Dreaming is all you have left. That night, you find a tooth under your pillow. Not yours. It's too small, too white, too perfect, wrapped in a scrap of linen. No note, no explanation. You stare at it for a long time. Then you set it on the windowsill. Let the moonlight catch it. A small, strange offering. To what? You don't know. To memory? To ghosts? To the child you used to be? You watch the stars until your eyes close. And finally, sleep finds you. At least for a little while.
It begins slowly. Just a heaviness in your legs that never quite lifts. A slowness in your steps that feels more like gravity giving up on you than exhaustion. You tell yourself it's nothing. You've survived worse. Frostbitten toes, boiled grease on your forearm, the broken rib from slipping near the laundry kettles 2 winters ago. But this is different. Not a pain, a presence. As though something has moved in beneath your skin, quietly, politely, and refuses to leave. You still show up for your tasks. You still fetch the coal, carry the buckets, polish the door handles. You still nod when spoken to and keep your head bowed, your answers brief, your footsteps soft. But the stairs get taller. The corridors get longer. Your arms seem to forget their strength halfway through a task. You try to hide it, not because you fear punishment, but because you know what happens to those who slow down. They are replaced. Not cruelly, not loudly, just one day they are no longer assigned tasks. Then they're no longer called by name. Then someone else takes their cot. Then their name fades from the slate board. Then their bowl disappears from the line. No one talks about it. No one asks. Because everyone knows. Versailles does not care for the weak. So you keep moving until you no longer can. The day you collapse, it's in the corridor behind the drawing room. You're carrying a tray of candlesticks, heavy bronze ones polished to gleam like new coin. Your fingers go numb around the handles, the edges blur, and before you can even call out or find something to lean on, your knees give way. The tray doesn't crash, it thuds. The sound is dull, like a forgotten thought. Then, silence. You try to push yourself up, but your arms won't listen. The floor is cool beneath your cheek. You stay there, breathing in the scent of wax and brass and your own skin. You wait for someone to find you. Eventually someone does. You don't see who it is. You hear soft footsteps, the rustle of skirts or a long coat. Then fingers touch your wrist, your neck. Then a voice, low, male, calm, still breathing. More footsteps. Then nothing. When you wake again, you're not in your cot. You're in a narrow side room, bare stone, a single cot, no window. A tin bowl of water rests near your feet. Someone has removed your shoes. A blanket covers you.
Your limbs feel like paper. You sit up, slowly, and cough. The sound echoes. Something red and thin stains your palm. You press it against your chest and lean back. You are not dead. Not yet. But you are close. No one visits. You hear footsteps in the hall sometimes, the low murmur of servants exchanging schedules or gossip, but no one enters. A tray of food appears once a day, thin broth, stale bread, water. The bread cuts the roof of your mouth. You chew slowly, swallow with difficulty. It hurts, but you eat every crumb.
Because something in you is still trying. Not much, but something. You sleep more now. Not deeply, not restfully, but often. Time becomes loose, unpinned. You measure days by how many times the candle burns down, how many bowls of broth appear. It might be 4 days, it might be 10. You lose track. In your dreams, you walk the corridors again, only this time the palace is quiet, too quiet. No bells, no orders, no boots on tile, just you, moving through endless rooms, always alone. The fires are out, the chandeliers dark, and every time you pass a mirror, your reflection is missing. You wake shivering. You pull the blanket tighter. You wonder if anyone remembers your name. One morning, the door opens. You blink into the light. A figure enters, blurry at first, then clearer. Henri. He looks older. Or maybe you do. He crouches beside your cot. "You idiot," he says softly. His voice trembles. You smile. Or try to. It feels strange, like your face has forgotten how. He offers you something from his pocket, a piece of dried apple wrapped in cloth. You take it slowly. It tastes like sunlight and dust. "I thought you were gone," he says. You cough. "Not yet." He chuckles, but it's quiet, pained. "There's talk," he murmurs, "of moving you to the infirmary wing." You frown. "There's no infirmary." "There is," he says. "Not for us usually, but sometimes they make exceptions when someone noble has a soft heart or a memory." You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. "The lady who gave you that pear last season?" She asked. You stare at him. She remembered? She remembered you. That's the strangest part. Not the illness, not the bed, not the quiet, but the idea that someone, anyone, might have remembered your face in the crowd, that you left a trace, even here. You were moved 2 days later, carried on a stretcher like royalty, though it feels more like furniture being relocated. The halls blur past. You catch glimpses of the places you once worked, the kitchen door, the broom closet with the secret etching, the corridor where you saw the king's shadow pass. The infirmary is clean, sparse, sunlit. You're placed near a window for the first time in years. Outside, the garden is in bloom. You can see a statue of a man holding a flute, vines creeping up his ankles. The sheets on your bed smell of rosemary. Someone changes your bandages daily, brings warm towels, broth with a slice of carrot this time, and once, unbelievably, a plum. The sweetness shocks you. You weep while eating it, not because of the taste, but because no one watches you weep. You are allowed to feel it here, alone. A week passes, then another. Your cough softens, your fingers stop trembling when you lift the spoon. You are not well, but you are better than you were, and better than you thought you'd be again. One morning, you sit up without pain. You touch the window pane with one hand. It's warm. You breathe in and out slowly. The birds outside argue in the trees. You close your eyes and smile, because you remember their names. You remember everything, even yourself.
Time, which once pressed on you like an iron weight, now slips quietly by, unnoticed and mostly unbothered. You remain in the infirmary wing longer than you expected, long enough to no longer flinch when a soft shoe enters the room, long enough to recognize the sun's position in the sky by how the shadow from the statue outside crawls across the floor each afternoon. It starts beneath the cot and ends at your elbow before disappearing again into the wall like it has ends elsewhere. They no longer ask you to do anything. No coal to haul, no silver to polish, no ash to scrape or linen to stack. For the first time in your life, the days belong to you, and they move not by obligation, but by the rhythm of your own breath, sometimes ragged, sometimes calm, but always present. A miracle maybe, or a delay. You are never quite sure. Sometimes a maid stops in to check your pulse. Sometimes it's Henry with a broken biscuit and a quick story from the kitchens. Once, the Marquis who asked after you, the one who used to wave her fans like weapons, peeks in. She doesn't stay long, says nothing, just looks. Her painted face unreadable, her perfume drifting long after she's gone. You don't resent her, not even a little. That world, the world of silk and secrets and golden corridors, is still just behind the wall, but it's no longer yours to chase. You don't want it anymore. You only want to breathe without coughing, to sit without pain, and to fall asleep without wondering if you'll wake.
You want small things. Warmth, a peeled apple, a clean shirt, a patch of morning sun. And now, finally, you get them. One afternoon, a pigeon lands on the window ledge. You don't move. Just watch it. Its head jerks side to side as it studies you, one eye at a time. Then it coos, soft and disinterested, and plucks something from the sill, a breadcrumb someone left. It hops once, twice, and flies off. You sit for several minutes longer, smiling faintly. That pigeon has more freedom than you've ever known, and yet you don't envy it. Not anymore. The palace is a cage made of beauty. The pigeon doesn't care. It simply lands and leaves. No obligation, no bowing. Maybe that's what peace is. Not escaping, but simply no longer wishing to. Your strength begins to fade again. This time not from sickness, but from something gentler. Something like time itself, unspooling. Your bones ache differently now. The cough has retreated, but your breath is thin, as though air no longer wants to stay inside you. The infirmary maids notice. They don't say anything, but their hands linger a little longer on your shoulder. Their voices soften. One brings you warm milk with honey, without being asked. Another adjusts your blanket more often, even when you insist you're not cold. You feel it coming. Not death exactly, but a leaving. A slipping away from the fabric of Versailles, like a thread finally giving way from the hem. You're not afraid. You've done all the hard things already. You've survived the invisible life. Now you're simply fading. And that, somehow, feels easier. The day it happens is quiet. A Tuesday, you think. No bells, no visitors.
The garden smells like mint and damp earth. You wake with the light warm on your cheeks. You're not coughing. You're not sweating. You're not in pain. You're simply tired. Deeply, peacefully tired. You look out the window and watch the trees sway. A bird sings. A breeze stirs the edge of your blanket. You remember everything. The weight of the first mop in your hand. The slap of soap water against stone. The stolen fig. The tooth lost in the soup. The echoing ballroom. The night you dreamed the palace upside down. And the moment someone said your name, softly, like it mattered. It's enough. You lie back. You close your eyes. You breathe in. You breathe out. And you don't open them again.
Because something in you is still trying. Not much, but something. You sleep more now. Not deeply, not restfully, but often. Time becomes loose, unpinned. You measure days by how many times the candle burns down, how many bowls of broth appear. It might be 4 days. It might be 10. You lose track. In your dreams, you walk the corridors again, only this time, the palace is quiet. Too quiet. No bells, no orders, no boots on tile, just you, moving through endless rooms, always alone. The fires are out, the chandeliers dark, and every time you pass a mirror, your reflection is missing. You wake, shivering. You pull the blanket tighter. You wonder if anyone remembers your name. One morning, the door opens. You blink into the light. A figure enters, blurry at first, then clearer. Henri. He looks older. Or maybe you do. He crouches beside your cot. "You idiot," he says softly. His voice trembles. You smile. Or try to. It feels strange, like your face has forgotten how. He offers you something from his pocket, a piece of dried apple wrapped in cloth. You take it slowly. It tastes like sunlight and dust. "I thought you were gone," he says. You cough. Not yet. He chuckles, but it's quiet, pained. "There's talk," he murmurs, "of moving you to the infirmary wing." You frown. "There's no infirmary." "There is," he says. "Not for us usually, but sometimes they make exceptions, when someone noble has a soft heart or a memory." You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. "The lady who gave you that pear last season, she asked." You stare at him. She remembered? She remembered you. That's the strangest part. Not the illness, not the bed, not the quiet, but the idea that someone, anyone, might have remembered your face in the crowd. That you left a trace. Even here. You are moved 2 days later, carried on a stretcher like royalty, though it feels more like furniture being relocated. The halls blur past, you catch glimpses of the places you once worked, the kitchen door, the broom closet with the secret etching, the corridor where you saw the king's shadow pass. The infirmary is clean, sparse, sunlit. You're placed near a window for the first time in years. Outside, the garden is in bloom. You can see a statue of a man holding a flute, vines creeping up his ankles. The sheets on your bed smell of rosemary. Someone changes your bandages daily, brings warm towels, broth with a slice of carrot this time. And once, unbelievably,
a plum. The sweetness shocks you. You weep while eating it, not because of the taste, but because no one watches you weep. You are allowed to feel it here, alone. A week passes, then another. Your cough softens, your fingers stop trembling when you lift the spoon. You are not well, but you are better than you were. Now that our story is over, let the palace grow still around you. The noise fades, the corridors quiet. The great hall of mirrors reflects only the soft shimmer of candlelight now, flickering gently, as though remembering the boy who once polished its floors. You are no longer there. Not quite, but your memory remains in a quiet breath behind the curtains, in the way of floorboard creaks at dawn, in the glint of polished brass untouched by royalty. There's no rush now. No tray to carry, no cold basin to scrub, no one to bow to, no one to watch. The rhythm of Versailles slows like a lullaby played on the strings of silence. The shadows in the linen closet stretch out and yawn. Even the pigeons on the windowsill nestle into their feathers. The golden doors of the king's chambers are closed, and outside the garden curls gently into evening, vines resting against old stones satisfied. Let yourself be part of that stillness now. Not forgotten, just quiet, just still. You are not alone. You are surrounded by breath and warmth, by memories that no longer need to be heavy, by peace that no longer needs to be earned. You did everything you could. You stayed as long as you had to. And now, you can rest. No need to open your eyes, no need to get up. Just drift. Softly. Easily. Like a candle burning out at the end of a long, beautiful day. Good night. And better than you thought you'd be again. One morning, you sit up without pain. You touch the window pane with one hand. It's warm. You breathe in and out slowly. The birds outside argue in the trees. You close your eyes and smile, because you remember their names. You remember everything, even yourself.